Okay, sorry. Here we go. All right, we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another live version of the Keeping Karlsson experience to differentiate it from, the actual show, in which case I'll be even more exuberant. What's up, Brian? How's it going?
Oh, pretty good. Pretty good, Elon. How are you? Everything's it's exciting. I feel like we're in sort of like there's a dead zone now between any news happening and training camps opening. It's just like quiet. Nothing's gonna change this close to the season. I guess the Paul Stasny signing rocked our worlds.
I think even Phil Kessel was a pretty big one
Yeah, that was a
also.
big one
I
also.
wonder if either of them will get drafted, but I guess we'll get into the live show and then we can talk about if those things are. Maybe
Yeah.
before we go start the show, you could turn on your light in the room you're in. I feel like you're in kind of a
Oh.
dark room. Or if not, then that's fine, but just
I
FYI.
I actually strategically placed myself under a light and it's still just
If that's what, as long as it's not going to get darker. Sometimes you're in a room that starts light and then it gets darker and darker as the night gets darker. But if it's going to stay like this, then I think it's manageable.
oh yeah,
Uh,
it's gonna stay like this.
Okay, cool. Hello, everyone in the chat. We've got a whole draft going on here, so I guess that's why we have all of our friends. Hello, and also the people that are not participating in the draft. Yeah, thanks for joining live. I guess with that, Brian, we might as well just like get going because we got a lot, a lot to get to on this show. So, without further ado, I guess. Do people see the screen okay? By the way, in the chat, yeah, you should. I mean, hopefully you do. And then do you also see Brian and I?
You could also share Kevin's draft board sheet.
Like I should share it.
I don't know. I'm trying to decide if that's more helpful.
No, let's just, I don't know. Because that doesn't even update in real time. I think
That's
this,
our
I think
that's
the
our
fan
secret
tracks
weapon.
draft is,
Yeah.
all right, getting rid of this thing there. Okay. Hey, Matthew. Matthew and I feel like still need to figure some stuff out for our Dynasty League before the season starts, before we get locked into all these crazy contracts. But okay, that's a topic for another time. Is this mic in good? Sorry, I went away. Remember I did that patron cast from Vancouver?
Yeah.
And I feel
How's
like
the wedding?
I feel like I don't still have everything like perfect in my setup. Like I didn't get it all back, but okay. I just tightened up my mic thing, so that feels better. Yeah, the wedding was nice.
Yeah,
It was really
nice
nice.
time.
Good food. I even like felt a little emotional. Like I thought the speeches were like really sweet. Like normally I'm not the type of person to, I'm just like drinking my wine and not paying too close attention, but they were nice. But okay, that's it. Okay,
We're
let's start the
still
show.
we're missing 3 from the draft room.
Is that a problem? Do you want to message people on Discord? I can
I'm
take care
doing
of all
that
the intro
now.
to the show while you're sort of being a police on that. Because we've got a lot of intro to get to, so I could just go. Shall I?
You shall.
Okay. I guess I didn't think of my like little fun intro. Hosted by a guy who feels like mocking is the sincerest form of no, it's a stupid joke. Hosted by a guy who
That is funny.
okay.
Mockery is the sincerest form of.
Okay, flattery. All
Is
right.
there like a better? Is there something funnier than flattery?
Preparation.
Mockery is the sincerest form of preparation. Yeah,
Okay.
that's so good.
Nailed it.
There's the title.
Yeah! Yeah, 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 yes! Welcome everybody to another episode of the Keep It Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the longest running fantasy hockey podcast in the world, hosted by a guy who believes that mockery is the sincerest form of preparation. Brian told me that was a good intro. I don't know. I'm your host, Dylan Dubrowski, and with me, as always, for what's not going to be an as always show because we're trying something new here. Brian and I are going to try to live commentate a mock draft. So we'll see how that goes. And the guy who's going to join me, I already dropped his name. A bad job for a host, right? You're not supposed to drop the name of the person you're introducing until that final moment where you say, with me, the fantasy hockey robot himself, Brian Com.
Hello, Elon. Hello, everybody. I don't think you had to couch. Like, were you so insecure about your opening joke that you needed to be like, Brian thought it was funny? So if you didn't like it, go after Brian. I'm not sure. Like, you can reap the rewards of it being funny, or like you really played both sides there. I think it was great. I feel pumped for what we're about to do, which we usually save for the auction draft. We usually have like our live, and we're still gonna. And Mike Clifford, by the way, is on board from Dobber Hockey. We're going to have our tier 1 live auction draft show coming in a while. Like that's still like maybe over a month away.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, a lot of you are drafting or starting to draft, and you might be wondering, well, is this a good pick? Is this a good pick? What would Brian and Elon say about this pick I'm about to make? And that's what we've built the show for today.
Yeah, we just got 14 of our patrons to volunteer to do a mock draft for the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League. That's why it's 14. Every league in the Cupful, which is our ultimate league, which I'll tell you about in a sec, is 14 people. They draft 18 players overall, and so we're just going to mock that up. The only difference is going to be they're going to have like 20, 30 seconds per pick, as opposed to in the Cupful where you have like 8 hours, because we do slow drafts, and the drafts last for a couple of weeks for a few reasons, right? First of all, to accommodate like the different time zones. And then also it's just like a lot of fun. You have your live chat. You're like, I guess it's maybe for some people a little bit stressful just having to wait for your pick for so long and see if you're going to get sniped. But I think it's just like a really fun experience. It just gets prolonged with the slow draft. But here, there's going to be nothing slow about it because we're going to try to knock this out in 2 1-hour parts. And yeah, we're just going to start in part 1. Maybe we'll go up to like round 9, then take a break. We'll come back. We'll do the rest. And yeah, like Brian said, Brian and I are just going to comment on everyone's picks. And like, the plan isn't just to like be specifically like, wow, why did Dylan pick that guy? What a bum. But like more so just to like, yeah, just get an understanding of what are the trends of the mock draft. Our forwards or defense going in an interesting way? Are certain players going higher than we expected to? I think it's going to be really fun and hopefully a good, exercise for the listeners to follow along with. And we'll do our best to keep you up to speed with everything going on in this draft and our thoughts. So a lot to get to. Before we get to that, of course, a couple things. Keeping Karlsson is very proudly presented by DauberHockey.com, which we're super stoked about, especially because now's the time of year where Dauber has released their amazing guide that they do every year. And the best thing is you buy it now, and then as training camp goes on and there's updates, they're like updating that guide. So you could just keep re-downloading it without having to buy it again. So check it out at DauberHockey.com. Also, Brian, the thing we're mocking for is our Ultimate League, the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League, which still has registration open. You've got like 10 more days if you haven't registered yet to get in and start your journey to fantasy hockey glory. It's a blast. We've been updating our promotion relegation scheme recently. Like if you start in tier 8, I think is going to be for the new people who haven't played before. If you win one of your tier 8 divisions, well, you're only going to have one. If you win your tier 8 division, there's going to be a bunch of them. You're going to jump up like 3 tiers to tier 5. And if you win that, you might jump up the next year, like 3 tiers to tier 2. Like you're going to be able to climb up really quickly if you do well. We also have our fast track, one lucky person, or I guess super skilled person that has the most points through all of the couple just goes straight to tier 1. And you know what? The tier and the promotion relegation, that's just like a small part of it anyways, because in your league, you're going to have a lot of fun. You're going to be playing with other like really dedicated fantasy players. And you're going to also be in a league that's really moderated properly, commissioned properly, curated to make it a really great experience. So yeah, we invite anyone listening to come play in this league. And if you're curious about the settings or anything like that, well, we're going to go through a lot of that in this mock draft, right? Because we're going to be drafting teams as if these people were filling their cupful teams. So I guess let's get into the settings themselves, which are, it's a points league. Brian, you want to go through the point allocations? I don't know. I guess I've been talking for a long time here. So why don't I pass it over to you to tell us some of the league settings here before we start the draft?
Okay, yeah, I'll jump in. So we've got 14 teams, and each team rosters 18 players. So you've got 2 each of center, left wing, and right wing. You've got 4D, 2 goalies, 2 util spots, and then 4 bench spots. So pretty standard, nothing overly fancy about the way we've composed the rosters. And then if you're not familiar with the legendary cupful scoring system, which we have worked very hard to tweak and get perfectly right as best we can, you can always see all of this, by the way, kkupfl.com/rules. You can see for skaters, they get 4.5 points for a goal, 3 points for an assist, a half a point for a shot, half point for a block, quarter point for a hit, and a full point for a shorthanded point. And then goalies, we tried to balance goalies a little better this year. They seemed a little overpowered last season. So what we did is Elon, I actually have to pause now because I can't pause the draft until it starts. Okay. And it starts in 6 seconds.
Okay.
So
what we did is
yeah,
for the edit point, Taylor Hall could have a good year. I know Chris is joking around here, but I'm not at 8th.
Okay.
But,
there we go. It's
what we did is
and just
to remind you, we decreased the value of a save.
Yeah. decrease the value of a save. I swear we asked NASA engineers to work on this, and all we did was we decreased the value of a save by 5/100ths of a point. Basically, what was happening last season is that goalies were the best streaming option because even if they didn't play that great, if they just saw a lot of shots, they'd have a much better game than your average forward or defenseman stream. So we've sort of given them a little less of a reward for making a save, which is to make them less powerful, less of a deciding factor. They could still very much be a deciding factor, but that's how we have goalies set up. So 2 points for a win, 0.3 of a point for a save. You lose at 1.5 points for a goal against, and you get a bonus 2 points for a shutout as a goalie. Again, if you didn't catch that, you can see this all at kkupfl.com/rules. As Elon said, we are doing, this is a fast draft. 30 seconds a pick is what we set it at to start for the purpose of doing this live. So it's moves quickly and it's entertaining. We can cram it all into one show. Normally in the Cupful, we have our slow draft, our 8-hour timer. So that's one thing that's different. One thing that's going to be the same as our Cupful draft, though, is we are using the 3rd round reversal on Fantrax this season, which means that the 3rd round draft order is the same as the 2nd round draft order. Instead of snaking after round 2, you repeat round 2 in round 3 and then snake from there. And part of the logic here is if you're getting McDavid first overall, then you're going to pick last in the 2nd and 3rd rounds to try and balance the fact that there's no McDavids at the end of the 1st round. So while you're getting picks 1 and 28 in a normal snake situation, So we're trying to balance the fact that, you're going to, do you want to just jump in? You're really good at explaining this, Elon. Or you want me to finish?
No, I'm good to jump in. I just don't know from where.
Well, I said we're trying to balance the fact that if you get McDavid first overall, you've got to wait a little longer to get
Okay, so I could jump in from there.
Okay.
Yeah, basically one thing that we've discovered, and I guess we'll learn more from this by observing this mock draft. We figured those first 5 or so picks, it's not only McDavid, McKinnon. I'm throwing out names here for the drafters, but I think they know about these players. Draisaitl, Matthews, these guys are maybe so amazing that then once you go down later in the draft into round 2, a lot of the players are a lot more similar, where you're not getting a huge advantage from maybe drafting earlier in the 2nd round versus later in the 2nd round. We found the McDavid and Matthews drafters were still getting a really solid guy at the end of round 2, similar to the people going at the start of round 2, and then they also got the first pick in round 3. So yeah, that's the rule we're going with, and we'll see. Brian will comment about it during this draft. One other thing I just want to throw out there really quickly is a question we always get, why shorthanded points and no power play points? I feel like people always ask us that every year, so I'll just very quickly tackle it. That the way we see it, if you're drafting a guy who gets a lot of power play points, we're rewarding you enough. If you have Austin Matthews, you're already getting 4.5 points for every goal and 3 points for every assist, and the fact that they're on the power play already means they're going to be getting a ton of points, right? Being on the power play is a great boon to help a player get from being a 60-point guy to an 80-point guy or a 100-point guy. So we figured, why just deepen the chasm between the top power play guys and the non-top power play guys? There's already a pretty big difference. So that's why we're not counting power play points. You're already getting, it's not like a categories league where you can it's fun to have a bunch of different things. And then shorthanded points, though, you might be well, then why that? They're so random. Yeah, exactly. It's just kind of fun. It's a rare thing. It doesn't happen often. And so it's cool. And when it happens, it's just a fun thing. It's a skilled play, right? It's hard to get a shorthanded point. We figured an extra point, it's not going to make or break, and no one's going to be drafting their players based on trying to maximize shorthanded points, but it's just a fun thing to happen during a game. Oh, look at that, I got an extra point. So that explains that, but I guess we don't have too much time to dive deep into everything. So Brian, I think if we're ready, let's just get this show on the road and see how it goes. Oh, should we introduce? Is there anything like that? We're not going to have the drafters on the show, but I guess as people are making their picks, we could just mention their names as we go. So Brian, any last thoughts as the official commission of this draft before we get started?
No, I will just add that if you want to see the draft happen live, you can check it out on our YouTube channel. If you go to keepingkarlsson.com/live, you will find the footage. If you find it easier to follow along that way, or you want to relive it with a live experience, Elon is sharing his screen for anybody watching us on YouTube. But thank you for the download. It means a lot. If you're listening to this on YouTube, please also subscribe to our podcast, whichever way you want. But Elon, we should start the draft. So Nick is up first. I'm going to hit resume because I paused it because we went a little past the draft time, and we're off and running. So Elon, first pick.
Oh boy.
I feel like in past years it's been, oh, McDavid or McKinnon, and then it was McDavid or Draisaitl. This year there's no question, right? Like it's McDavid. Don't galaxy brain it.
Um, I mean, so definitely, I think if you wanted to go like a Matthews, I'm not going to be like, you're dumb, you're not doing this right. Like Matthews scored like, what was it, 60 goals last year? Like he's clearly someone that in our format is amazing. I guess the thing for me is that the reason why I would take McDavid, and yeah, McDavid did go first, Matthews went second. I think that while Matthews, I think maybe even averaged more, a couple points per game than McDavid. McDavid actually had a bit of a down year compared to the year before. But I feel like just that upside is so insane with Connor McDavid. Like Matthews, yeah, he paced for 119 last year and had 60 goals, but I feel like that's probably like I'm not expecting more, right? With McDavid, I wouldn't be surprised to see him hit like 150 points or something crazy. So for me, I'm not, and like you say, every year it's like 1 year it's McKinnon who did better than McDavid, 1 year it's Matthews who did better than McKinnon. Like I wouldn't be surprised if someone does better than Connor McDavid. I think, but I just don't know who exactly it'll be. But I just know that Connor McDavid will be right at the top. If he's not number one, he'll be like number two.
Right. If he's beaten out, it's not going to be by much. And really, if we're going to say someone in the league is going to get 150 points next year, I'm just saying, if we were going to say that, everyone's first bet would be Connor McDavid. Like even at the top end of the draft, he still has the upside to go beyond really anyone else's upside. Like I couldn't think of Matthews or McKinnon or Draisaitl reaching that number. I could imagine it happening for McDavid. So he went first. And then, Elon, we've seen a pretty predictable pattern. We've had a lot of mock drafts so far in preparation for the Cupful, which I think, we'll share at some point. We should probably get on that, sharing our mock ADP. But the first six picks of this draft have been pretty predictable. It's pretty standard. We see McDavid and then some mix. In this draft, it's gone Matthews, Draisaitl, McKinnon, Makar, and Kucherov. And you know what? I'm even going to throw Kaprizov in there as like the locked in top seven. In my opinion, those guys should be going in the top seven every time. I think you've got the top four, depending on if you want to throw D in there and Makar with McDavid, Matthews, Draisaitl, McKinnon. And then Makar, Kucherov, Kaprizov. I think those are the 7 picks. Every time a draft finishes 7 picks with similar settings to ours, those are the guys who are going to be off the board. And then it gets interesting.
I wonder. So I think, first of all, Makar, I think the two interesting things here are Makar and Kaprizov, right? Like, I think, first of all, Cale Makar, he had an amazing year, right? He paced for 92 points. Then he even did better in the playoffs, right? He had 86 points in 77 games in the regular season, then 29 points in 20 games, which is a 119 point pace in the playoffs. I wonder if he'd be going so early in all these mocks if it wasn't for his amazing playoff performance. But yeah, it's pretty amazing to be able to get what seems like a sure shot 90 plus point defenseman, basically someone who produces like a forward, and then you put that in your D spot. So I get why Makar is going early, and I really have no doubts that he's going to keep it up. So someone later, actually Roman Josi in this draft went at 10. I mean, if Josi does what he did last year, that's a great pick, right? For the same reason as taking Makar. I wonder if Josi's not as reliable just because maybe his team isn't I don't feel as super confident that a Philip Forsberg and a Matt Duchene will do what they did compared to what McKinnon and Rantanen. So I think that the Makar pick is interesting. I think that, and the Kaprizov, so last year, I feel like we were still living in a world where David Pastrnak was someone that people thought of as a sure shot, top 5, top 6. And Pastrnak
he's
just
fallen out of that group.
Yeah, he's 11 now. And I just wonder if, last year Pastrnak was injured for a bit. He came back. He didn't start as amazing as people expected him to do, right? He started a little bit slow. We actually just dropped our beat writer interview, by the way, with Fluto Shinzawa. So you can check that out for more Pasta talk. But yeah, he only had 18 points in his first 18 games, which, isn't as exciting. But by the end of the season, he had 16 points in his last 10, scoring a ton of goals. And I guess now this year people are concerned because of the injuries on the Bruins. But the word is Pasta's going to be on that same line with Taylor Hall and with David Krejci centering, which I think even better than Eric Haula. So I wonder if that's really good value. And I wonder if Kaprizov and Pastrnak, you were saying it's Kaprizov, obviously. And I wonder if starting with Kaprizov, we have a few guys, also Ovi, Barkov and Pastrnak. I don't know. I feel it's not so obvious that if I would take Kaprizov there. I think if I had 7th overall pick, I wouldn't be happy. I'd rather have 9th or 10th and get an earlier pick in round 2.
Yeah, I think Kaprizov is right on the cusp there, because I could see myself being as happy with Barkov. That might be about it, really, if I'm looking at the list. Pastrnak, I'm glad you brought him up, is an interesting one. He's gone as early as 8. We've got about a 20 mock sample size right now as we as everyone on our Discord server gets ready for this year's Cupful. He's gone as early as 8th and as late as 17th overall. Like if you're getting Pasternak 17th overall, you're laughing, right? That's like early second round for a guy who could have gone in the top 5 in any of the last few seasons. So that's huge. If he shows up and you're getting him late in the first, plus with our 3rd round reversal, because you'll pick early in both the 2nd and 3rd rounds, that puts you in pretty good shape. One thing I've noticed here, so Pasternak, Marner, Rantanen, actually, you know what? We're 2 picks away from finishing the 2nd round. After that, I'm going to hit pause and we can recap all that we've seen. But one thing I guess I can mention right off the top is we have seen through 2 rounds, 3 defensemen go off the board. You've got Makar, who's a given, right? He's a first rounder, no doubt about it. And then the other 2 have gone off the board are Roman Josi and Victor Hedman. We've also seen 2 goalies go off the board. We've got Vasilevsky, who went actually Shesterkin went 2nd in the 2nd round, and Vasilevsky went later, about 8 picks later at 10th in the 2nd round. So, Elon, what do you think about taking those D early? We've got Josi and Hedman, and Makar I'm not even counting, really. Like, Makar's got to go. I think Josi, Hedman, like, that's a choice. You're choosing to go big on D early, and then also 2 goalies going in the 2nd round. Shesterkin and Vasilevsky stand pretty, like, almost alone above the rest of the league. So does that make them worth that 2nd round pick?
Yeah, lots to talk about. And this draft is just like blazing by. I don't even know if at this point we're doing commentary or it's like we're just commenting on a draft that will basically already be done. But yeah, I guess you're pausing it. But okay, good questions. As far as the D, yeah, I guess me personally, I want the superstar forwards, right? Like Roman Josi again had an amazing year. Victor Hedman also had a really solid year. He went later in this draft, right? He's like 6th pick of the 2nd round. But I do wonder if you're just better off, like after Josi went Pasternak, Marner, Rantanen, Brady Tkachuk. Like those are guys who could be like game breakers. And like so can Roman Josi, but I just wonder if maybe there's still like a lot of good defensemen out there. Like Adam Fox is still out there, Aaron Ekblad, like Chris Letang, like John Karlsson. Like, I could name a bunch. Like there's a lot of really good guys that I feel like you could depend on to give you super high-end production. So I wonder if I'd rather have like, if there's still like superstar players out there that I think could be like, top 10 in Cupful points, I think I'd probably rather that. But like Hedman, by the time he got picked by Dylan, the players taken after Hedman are like Matthew Tkachuk, Jack Eichel. Oh man, Jake Gensel. I want to talk about so many of these guys. Eichel, I think could be a real steal. But anyways,
yeah, I'm going to summarize and then we'll talk about them.
Yeah.
After
that's
the
my thoughts. Yeah, that's my thoughts on D. I think personally I would wait a little bit and try to get that next crew. Like if I get John Karlsson as my first D in like the 3rd round or the 4th round, like I'm pretty happy. Like a Dougie Hamilton, if you believe in his bounce back, which I do, like a Morgan Riley, even if you're going down further. Like I just wonder if you can just like not like go so heavy on D and still end up with like a solid core but with superstars. And maybe I'll just quickly also answer your goalie question. I agree with you. Shesterkin and Vasilevsky are the clear top 2. And it's like a McDavid thing that I said before. Like I'm not saying I'm guaranteeing you that like it's going to be Vasilevsky and Shesterkin at the end of the season as the top 2, but I'm pretty confident that they're going to be 2 of the top 5, And it's like there's always someone, like UC Saros could do it again. Like Connor Hellebuck always has that possibility. Like Thatcher Demko. Like there's other guys, like Jacob Markstrom at the beginning of last year was looking like he'd be the top guy. Like goalies are super hard to predict. So I just like the assurity of like a super volume guy. Like who's even the backup on the Rangers now? I don't even remember. Like they've lost Georgiev. I need to look that up.
I was going to say Charlie Lindgren, but no, he went to Washington.
Yeah, Vasilevsky still has Brian Elliott backing him up. Like I just feel like these are like teams that are just going to depend on their goalies so much. You're going to get a ton of games, and obviously they're good teams and they're amazing goalies. So it's just like
it's Yarrow Halak.
Oh, so there you go.
Backing up Shesterkin, which honestly I see that and I barely remember that happening. Barely.
Yeah, we had that convo at some point, but like, who remembers? But anyway, so you know what I mean? So it's like, like UC Saros, but like, Saros might be up there, like to be honest, but like Nashville's just not as good a team. And so, yeah, I think for sure those 2 goalies are like the sure things. And I'm not surprised they went as the top 2. And I think that those drafters won't be disappointed. I hope they would be. Like, let's say if randomly, like, I don't know, Jake Ottinger, who we've talked about on a recent podcast, and Ben and I have had some disagreements. Like maybe he does have that amazing year that some people are expecting, and let's say he ends up with more couple points than Vasilevsky for whatever reason. Like I hope the person who drafted Vasilevsky is not going to be like, wow, I really blew it, because it's like you got that like sure thing guy that you didn't have to worry about. There were no question marks. Like Ottinger, I think I'm like 70, 80% confident that he'll be really great, but there's still a small part of me that thinks there's a chance that he can, like, not be ready for this huge role that he's going to have, and maybe he'll blow it. Like, I have no concerns that Andrei Vasilevsky is ready to take on a volume starter's role, right?
No question about it. And no one backing him up either. That's going to, even in a pinch, like if Vasilevsky hits a rough patch, it's not like, okay, well, we're going to put Brian Elliott in while Vasilevsky gets his head right. No, Vasilevsky is going to be a guy who plays out of whatever slump he might fall into. And hey, the challenge in Tampa might be greater this year than it ever has been in the last few. But I still have no concerns about Vasilevsky. Like Shesterkin has huge challenges in New York and is up for them. And I feel like Vasilevsky would be too. And just for context, if we're looking at the best D left on the board, Elon, like you mentioned, you'd wait for the next group. I might say Victor Hedman's in the next group. If we're going by a couple performances last year, you've got Hedman, Letang, Ekblad, and John Karlsson all together in that next group. And then you're looking at guys like Moritz Seider, Adam Fox, Darnell Nurse, Zach Werenski, and Morgan Riley, Noah Dobson. So those are the groups of D that are left that you'd rather wait for. And I think I'm with you. I don't think I'd go second round Hedman. Like if I'm making a second round, a top 2 round D pick, it's going to be Makar or Josi. But I am also with you. Like there's so many big forwards. And we were having this chat on the Discord the other day where it's like there were so many 100-point forwards this season. It's harder to pass up a forward when everybody is doing the thing so freaking well. And defensemen, yeah, like Josi had a great season. Makar's other level. But really, we're not seeing the same level of like upping your game from the D. So I don't want to miss the boat on the top end forwards at the top of the draft. And then guys like Saros, Demko, Hellebuck, Ottinger are next on the docket for goalies. Going by last year's couple performances. To summarize the draft so far, you might be wondering, so I took you up to Kaprizov mid first round. After that, we went Ovechkin, Barkov, Josi, Pasternak, Marner, Rantanen, and Kachuk to close the first round. And then JL picked again after ending the first round, picked Huberdeau, Shesterkin, picked Huberdeau, and then Shesterkin went next. Then Panarin, Connor, Stamkos, Hedman, Kachuk, Eichel, Gensel, Vasilevsky, DeBrincat, Miller, Crosby, and Patrick Kane. And just before we start the draft again, Elon, I'm gonna start it while I make this comment.
I have so much to say, Brian, about so many of these picks. I feel like you don't need to start it for like another 10 minutes.
Okay, well, we need to finish the draft at some point. And like these are the, well, you know what, they're kind of the easy picks because you know who to pick, but it's hard to pick between them. And I would say in that group in the second round, outside Artemi Panarin, I have questions about all those forwards. It's not to say other forwards should have been drafted instead, but I find it pretty hard to pick between them when I can find, like, I feel like this year's unique. If I'm picking a forward in the second and third round, they already have flags against them, like Huberdeau, new team, bad reputation defensively. Kyle Connor was amazing last year. If nothing changed, I'd be all in, but things change. Rick Bowness is in his coach in a defensive system, and Connor's defensive game has been awful. You've got Stamkos with injury concerns, Matthew Tkachuk to a new team. Jack Eichel still has to really strut his stuff in Vegas. And who's he playing with? Is Mark Stone healthy? Jake Gensel actually seems pretty solid and safe in this group. And then Alex DeBrincat, new team. Where does he fit in the top 6? JT Miller, Sidney Crosby, both pretty solid coming at the end of the second round. And then Patrick Kane, who the heck's he playing with in Chicago? That's my quick look. And I feel like that trend from what I've seen in our mocks so far is going to continue in the third round. I'm going to have a lot to say to be like, am I so sure about this forward delivering that I'm investing a huge amount of draft capital in?
Yeah, I think that's the reason why we decided to go with this third round reversal, right? Like the person who took McDavid also got Patrick Kane. The person who took, I guess I get the name. Nick got McDavid and Patrick Kane. Taylor got Matthews and then Crosby. It's like, is Patrick Kane and Crosby that different from, like, if you look at the starter round too, you have Huberdeau, Panarin, Kyle Connor as like the forwards. Like, yeah, I'd rather have, like, I think Like those three guys, like Huberdeau obviously is a big question mark, and you know my policy, Brian, about players on new teams. Like I think if I like JL got Brady Kachuk and Huberdeau at the turn, I think if it was me, I would have maybe not gone Huberdeau. Like I love the Brady Kachuk pick, but I just wonder if like in a new situation, Huberdeau's now being centered by. So I guess like he was playing with Sandband. Like Huberdeau's amazing, but it's just like nothing's a guarantee, and I'd rather have someone like a Panarin or like even a Stamkos, like someone who like is already like really cemented in their role. But hey, someone's gonna take swings and like really benefit from it. I'm just, I guess, conservative with my top picks. But yeah, at the end of the day, I just wonder if like Patrick Kane, Crosby, JT Miller, DeBrincat, like sort of at the end of the second round, aren't that far away potentially from the guys at the start of the second round. That's the reason why we had this idea to do the third round reversal, just because it doesn't seem like such a huge advantage to start the second round compared to the advantage of starting the first round. Like I definitely see a big difference between McDavid, Matthews, Draisaitl, McKinnon versus like Pasternak, Marner, Rantanen, and Kachuk, which ended the first round. But yeah, as far as the picks in this round, I mean, it's more fun to talk about the ones I'm concerned about. Like Alex DeBrincat. Brian, I'm curious to get your thoughts. He went in the like 11th pick in the second round. I should probably bring like another view up so I can give you the specific numbers. Like DeBrincat, had an amazing year last year. Like if you look it up here, DeBrincat. 1 second, I'm gonna do an edit point. I'm trying to chat. Well, Alex DeBrincat. Yes, doing an amazing year last year. He ended with 41 goals and 37 assists, so 82 points. I don't know if that would be worthy of this
78
pick.
points.
Oh yeah, sorry. So let me go again. Alex DeBrincat, an amazing year last year. 41 goals, 37 assists in 82 games, so almost a point per game, 40 goals. Obviously amazing, right? He also threw a decent number of hits. I still don't know if like that performance would be enough to be worthy of a pick in the top 2 rounds. Like I see some guys who did better than him. Like I just am curious to know if Phil here is thinking like DeBrincat's going to be like even better in Ottawa, or if he's just kind of hoping that DeBrincat will do the same and kind of just thinking, like he still likes that better than the other people. It's going to be hard to say. It's like a whole new situation. I'm just curious to know, Brian, what's your take at this point? Like, would you take DeBrincat as a second round guy?
I don't think so. I think it's a little early for me. He was seeing almost 21 minutes a night last season in Chicago. He saw 20 and a half minutes a night the year before when he was on an 88-point pace. So it's not the quality of player I'm worried about. Really, ever since his breakout sophomore season, even in his rookie season, we've seen DeBrincat as being for real. Like we haven't had questions. But now for me, the question is, how well can he do? I'm expecting his ice time to be cut by about 2 minutes a night. He's not going to be the only guy. I mean, he wasn't the only guy in Chicago. He was on the only line in Chicago. So I'm looking back to that sophomore season. He played almost 18 minutes a night and still paced for 76 points. Like he had almost identical numbers to the last season when he saw a few more minutes of ice a night. So I'm just hopeful that he finds a way to keep doing that. Like he was able to put a few more shots on goal with the extra ice time, about 50 more, but he didn't score any more than he did with all that extra ice time last year. He shot 3% better the year he had just under 18 minutes of ice. So that's the big question. Can he do it again? And it's too big a question for me to want to grab him in the second round. I don't think he's out of place, even early or middle of the third round, but I would be nervous. I just want to draft someone who I know is going to be a top power play player. And we don't know anything about Ottawa's top line. For reference, in our mock so far, this is actually, it's not the earliest he's gone. He's gone as early as 15 DeBrincat in our mocks. On average, he's going around 33rd, according to our most recent mocks. He's gone as late as 41st. So there's context there. I think you could probably get him a little later. So we went, 26th instead of 33rd? I think 33rd obviously makes a little more sense, but we'll see where things go from here. I think I'll at least mention, based on full performance last season, the forwards that were passed over by our drafters, like they skipped these guys based on last year's rankings, were Brad Marchand for obvious reasons, Philip Forsberg, Timo Meyer, Gabriel Landeskog, and then Vander Kane, Tarasenko, Johnny Gaudreau, and Aho were all ahead of DeBrincat and a couple of the other guys who were drafted. And I think I'd prefer a couple of them to DeBrincat for sure.
Yeah, It's interesting. Yeah, I guess it's all about like again, it's not like we're saying that I don't, and I guess we don't need to be like just only talk about DeBrincat on this show, but like yeah, it's not, for him and in general, lots of players, right? It's like for me, it's a little bit about probabilities. Like I definitely can see DeBrincat meeting his draft position. It's just a matter of like how certain am I compared to other guys. There's actually another guy, Brian, that you haven't mentioned yet when you're talking about future guys that I was surprised didn't make it out of the second round or like didn't get picked yet. So when he gets taken, I'll mention him. But I guess we might as well like restart this thing, and then we'll talk about rounds 2 through I don't know however long we get in an hour after this quick break. Okay, you're listening to Keeping Karlsson. All right, we are back. Brian, I'm ready. Trigger round 2 to begin. And yeah, I have that name, and I just want to see how long it'll take. You mentioned a lot of guys that, you know, according to last year's stats were better, though those were all in terms of total points. I've got a guy in mind.
No, they were points per game.
Points per game? Okay, maybe you did say the guy and I just didn't hear it. I'm curious to see who goes. By the way, in the meantime, another guy that got taken in the second round that like going into last year, this would have been like huge value is JT Miller, right? Like he just like took off last year, like exploded into a superstar. He ended the year with 99 points in 80 games when the season before he wasn't even point per game. The year before that, he was like barely above a point per game. So he really like, you know, like like elevated his game. And yeah, he's so interesting because I didn't see anything from his numbers last year to think he can't do this again. But of course, there's all these like trade rumors. Do trade rumors and things like that affect your opinions on this kind of thing?
Well, I mean, after Vladimir Tarasenko's season last year, I can't really say that I cared so much, right? Like he was in the like that was a garbage situation. We thought even if he stayed, it would be miserable. And so I think JT Miller's already played through at least half a season of trade rumors, at least, and has proven that he can still do it. I'm actually, I feel like no matter where he lands in the top 6, he should be okay. But that's another sort of DeBrincat example where, I don't know, I want a guy who's going to be on the top line, not even on like a 1A, 1B line situation. I'd rather just go with the guy who I know is locked in to fantastic deployment.
And also, when you say he's going to be okay, I'm sure he'll be okay. But is he going to be like the 99-point guy that's worth such a high pick? Okay, so one guy who just got taken recently in the third round that I wanted to discuss is Evander Kane. I
mentioned him for the record.
You did mention him in that list. I want to stop down on him as someone who just was like so amazing in our format, right? At the end of last season, like the way, and then also in the fantasy playoffs, like all those shots on goal and like all those goals. And if he's going to actually spend the whole season with Connor McDavid, who we're talking about as someone who maybe didn't even perform as well during the regular season as he could have, like if McDavid goes up to like 140, 150 points and he's with Evander Kane and he's dishing to Kane, I don't know. This could be one of those picks that, yeah, there's a little bit of risk. Like he's Evander Kane, like he could get suspended or who knows what could happen. But like I could see that being like a good like steal of the draft. You know, like Timo Meier, for example, went to start the third round. I feel like, well, no, I guess I like them both actually. Like if Evander Kane, like I think in a lot of drafts, Evander Kane might be even falling a little bit because people are a little worried. And I see them as kind of similar. Anyways, I don't know. I like that Evander Kane pick. I just have a hunch about him, like potentially even being better than some of these guys we talked about in the second round. But anyway, let me give you some more.
No, I'm ready. Sorry, I'm just checking. Okay. I was just checking.
But no, it actually was a good idea for you to pause for a second. So let me just give that quick update before you respond to that. And Brian, before you respond about Evander Kane, here's the update so far. Round 3, Meier, Aho, Evander Kane, then a couple more D, Adam Fox and Letang, then Landeskog, Gaudreau, Svechnikov, Ekblad, Robertson, John Karlsson, still the guy I had in mind that I thought would go in round 2, hasn't been taken. But anyways, thoughts on Evander Kane or any of these other guys that have gone so far in round 3?
I love Evander Kane as a pick here. I should really clarify, as a pick here. Nobody clip that out of context, please. But Elon, would you believe that it's still about 4 spots sooner than he's been drafted on average in our mocks so far? You know, you said that are you saying that you would be interested in him as a second round player?
Let me put it this way. I would love to get him in the third round and then have him perform as a second round player, which I think he could. Like there's some risk here, but it seems like what we're learning here is maybe you could wait, but maybe not that long according to this mock draft. I would have hoped to get him like, you know, if I was the McDavid drafter, I would have been pretty happy to get McDavid and then like a Crosby or Kane and then get the other Kane after. That would be pretty sweet.
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't been lasting he's been going like early third round on like just a few picks later than he went here. Meier versus Kane, Meier, Aho, and Kane were the first picks of round 3. An interesting group of guys, but honestly, fewer flags on either of them than several of the ones I mentioned in the second round. Now, their upside their ceilings might be a little lower. Like Aho, I feel like is nice. Like you can count on him for a point per game. That's nice. You don't have to worry about it. Like he's a set it and forget it kind of guy. He's not going to frustrate you and get too streaky, which I like about him. Timo Meyer, I feel is getting like not the respect he deserves. And I wonder if he will beyond. It's just the shots on goal really do wonders for him. He was picked right, as we mentioned, at the top of the third round, and that's actually exactly where he's been going in mocks. So I don't think he's quite a second round player yet, but I think he could be within a year's time. And I think people just aren't sold on him as a superstar, and I get it. But when you look at how he collects his points, if you're doing a shots league, it's going to be pretty great to be able to grab Timo Meyer. And basically, the nice thing about a shooter is like that's guaranteed, right? The shooting is pretty repeatable, more repeatable than goals. You can rely on shots taken more than you can goals, which Elon was another reason why to like Evander Kane.
Yeah, but I guess with Meyer, he last year, any concerns that last year he had 4.2 shots per game, which was insane. But before that, he had like barely ever passed 3 shots per game. Like, is it just, yeah, he had a lot more ice time. I'm sure that like played the biggest role. And I guess we're at this point, like just solid on him, maintaining that same deployment, if not even having more deployment as like the Sharks kind of get older and like, they have to depend on him a little more. Like there's been a lot of players gone. By the way, let me just mention the guy who I was talking about that I was Jack Hughes. So he ended up going late in the third, and I'm just gonna throw it out there. I feel really good about Jack Hughes. I think he's like, this is gonna be the last year that we're gonna be talking about Jack Hughes not going in the top 2 rounds, unless he has like another annoying injury situation. But the guy like paced for 94 points overall last year, but like he was so good in that like before he got injured right at the end when he and Jesper Bratt started clicking. So yeah, I think that's a superstar that I would be so happy. Like the person who got Hughes, DK, got Draisaitl, JT Miller, and then Jack Hughes, and then actually Tarasenko there in the fourth. So it's good value. I like that. But anyways, okay, so Brian, I guess we're just going. There's so many players. This is like I just listened to a podcast recently. Now I'm like ruining this by we already don't have time. And I'm saying more crazy things, and then Brian's probably getting really annoyed at me. I just listened to a podcast where the two podcasters were talking about how they watched Transformers, like all the Transformers movies at 4 times speed, and they were trying to keep up with everything going on. And that's like and it was really just interesting to getting in their heads. And I feel like you're hearing this from me now. Right? I just have I'm seeing so much information coming at me, and I want to talk about all of it.
For our listeners who usually listen in double speed and find Elon like near unintelligible, this is Elon, I think you're setting a new words per minute record here. So I'll try and be the calmer voice. But actually, I love it. I love what we're doing. Timo Meyer, the reason he took so many more shots, Elon, is because he was on the top power play for the first time in his career. Can you believe it took that long? He saw another 3 minutes a night, only another minute or so on the power play. But on the power play, he was the heavy shooter in San Jose, like at 5-on-5 and on the power play. This guy knows how to let it rip, and he always does. So yeah, I'm not down that he could pull off that 4 shots per game once again. Okay, as we hit the end of the 4th round, now is such a great time to recap everything beyond Meyer, Aho, and Kane, who went as the first 3 picks in the 3rd round. After them, we saw 2 more D go off the board, 2 of 4 this round. So we had Fox drafted, and then Letang, then Landeskog, Gaudreau, Svechnikov, Aaron Ekblad, Jason Robertson, John Karlsson, Jack Hughes, Kevin Fiala, and then Philip Forsberg going at the end of round 3, even though he was by his performance last year, he's a 2nd round player. But we've shared the reasons why we're not 100% sure Forsberg, and we can get into that again just while I finish recapping. Then the 4th round, we saw Zibanejad go, then Jordan Kyrou ahead of Vladimir Tarasenko. What a world we're in. Kyrou and Tarasenko back to back. Then a couple more goalies, Saros and Hellebuck off the board, followed by Elias Lindholm, Elias Pettersson, Moritz Seider, Nick Ehlers, Brad Marchand going late in the 4th round, right ahead of teammate Patrice Bergeron, followed by Rupe Hintz, Morgan Riley, and Jake Ottinger to close out the 4th round. And for anyone just curious how 1st and 14th are looking at either end of the draft with our 3rd round reversal. So 1st overall pick has McDavid, Patrick Kane, Philip Forsberg, and Mika Zibanejad. 14th overall has Brady Tkachuk, Jonathan Huberdeau, Timo Meyer, and Jake Ottinger. which I think is a reasonably fair. Like this looks like I'm just testing our third round reversal, Elon, and I think that's fair. I think that makes sense.
Honestly, I feel like we were trying to punish the first overall pick by making them wait for their, third pick. And yet Nick got McDavid, and then he got Patrick Kane. Then he had to wait, and then he still got Philip Forsberg, who, like you said, could be huge value if he's anywhere similar to last year. Then Mika Zibanejad, who like a couple seasons ago was like a first-round guy in a lot of leagues. So I feel like I think we need to come up with a harsher penalty for first overall, because I still really love that team, even though we made it a little bit harder. Yeah, that's an awesome squad. I guess the interesting thing to follow, actually, with a few of these teams is like Nick, also the person who picked second, who has Matthews, Crosby, Fiala, Kyrou, and a few other teams don't have any D and don't have any goalies left. And like before, when we were talking about how like maybe you don't want to grab one of the top D, you'd rather get one of the later guys. But now we're in a situation where a bunch of D are off the board. Makar, Josi, Hedman, John Karlsson, Letang, Fox, Sider, Riley, and like a few of the top like guaranteed starting goalies are off the board. So I am curious to see, like, I want to put my own theory to the test here. Like these teams that don't have a D or a goalie yet, it'll be really fun to see how they shake out, like who they end up filling their D course with. Also the third overall, Draisaitl, Miller, Jack Hughes, and Tarasenko. So it's like, you're going forward heavy, which I think is fun, and you have like superstar forwards who are going to get you the most points probably. I guess goalies could get you a lot of points, but they don't play every game. But yeah, I'm just curious to follow that and see how it ends up shaking out for those teams. Brian, what do you think about Brad Marchand going mid-fourth? We just dropped that interview with Fluto Shinzawa. He was saying how he's a little bit concerned. Like that surgery that Marchand had was no joke, like double hip or something. And apparently it's the same surgery that Tuukka Rask had. And then when he came back, Rask like basically wasn't able to play. After hearing that interview, like, yeah, I love the idea of drafting Marchand so late, and he could be like a superstar for you if you just don't mind putting him in your IR. I didn't really consider until I listened to that interview the possibility that like this was serious. Like, so there's a big risk here, obviously big reward. But yeah, I don't know at this point. I think I'd rather, like, the next person. So Tom took Marchand, and then Julien took Patrice Bergeron, the 10th and 11th in round 4. I think I'd rather just take Bergeron, even though he's like injury prone, but he's like pretty great himself, and I don't have to worry about the fact that he's coming off this like crazy surgery. But maybe that's just me being too wimpy.
No, I don't think so. I mean, remember when Pasternak was gonna miss like a chunk of time, and you're like, he's young, he's a hockey player, he's in peak condition, he'll be back, and you were right. He was back. I don't remember if he missed any time or very little, if he did miss any. But it sounds like the Marchand situation is a little different. I was reading an article, ramblings on Dobber Hockey from Alex McLean, who's like, I have a feeling like I'd be more surprised if Marchand is out past Thanksgiving than if he's not in the lineup on opening night. And so he was sort of saying the same thing that you were about Pasternak, but after hearing what Fluto had to say and thinking, yeah, this guy's older and this is a serious surgery.
Yeah, like it's not only about the player, right? Yeah, it's also about the, yeah. Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. But he probably needs some time to kick off the rust, even like figure out how his body works again. Like, I don't know how much condition you can keep with what sounds like a very serious surgery. So I don't want to be the guy who drafts Brad Marchand. If I'm in a league where I know I'm going to have to like claw my way through every single week, I'm not ready. I'm not brave enough to pick Brad Marchand in the 4th round, even though I know I'll be super happy to have him once he's healthy. I agree, Len. I think I'd rather go Patrice Bergeron, but to be honest, I'm kind of I'm not high on either. Yeah.
So would you go Rupe Hintz, who went next? Who do you want of those three?
I think I would take Rupe Hintz first. I'm a big Rupe Hintz fan. I just traded for him in another league we're in. I traded a draft. It's a keeper league. I traded a draft pick to upgrade. I can't remember which keeper. Like Taylor Hall becomes Rupe Hintz. It wasn't quite as dramatic, but it was a nice little upgrade. So I'm happy. He seemed better than who I was going to get with the pick I traded to get him. So yeah, I'm high on him. I think everything we've seen from Hintz is also for real, and I think he's dependable too. Of course, as we heard from Saad Youssef in the Dallas 32 Beats interview, there's a lot of line permutations possible in Dallas with a new coach coming in. And of course, but you can't get so much more defensive than Rick Bowness either, even though Pete DeBoer is known to be a defensive coach. Also, look at what Hintz did with a defensive coach already. Of course, I like Robertson more, and he went full,
like Hintz at the end of the day. Yeah, Hints at the end of the day only had 72 points in 80 games, which is like good, but I guess we are in the fourth round, right? So I guess we have to start like not having point per game guys. Can I point out a team that I'm really excited about here?
Yeah.
It's the team that drafted seventh. It's Justin M. We talked about his Kaprizov pick, and I was kind of like, I don't know, is Kaprizov the right pick? But I mean, you can't argue with Kaprizov after what he's been doing. And then he like went with Jack Eichel then in the next round, then Svechnikov in round 3, and then Elias Pettersson in round 4. And I feel it's like Eichel, Svechnikov, Pettersson, 3 guys who disappointed us last year. This is a team that you wouldn't have been able to draft last year, right? Like all of these guys.
Right.
Well, Eichel was injured, right? So like he doesn't count. But like, Svechnikov and Pettersson would have gone like way before. So I feel like you're like getting good potential value here. And these aren't the kinds of guys where I think there's like huge risk. Like maybe Svechnikov, I don't know, Svechnikov is out. Like but in a disappointed season, he still had 70 points. And now Carolina has this like injury to Pacioretty, which they weren't expecting after losing Trocheck. So it's like they're gonna have to depend on Svechnikov even more. So I just feel like these are the types of players that could like win you your league. These guys are like super high upside, like 100-point upside for all 4 of them, and you're getting like them at pretty good value, and the downside isn't like that bad. So I think that's a fun team, and like I think I would also enjoy having that team, like just young, like good, excited, as opposed to like having like a Bergeron and whatever, like someone who you just kind of have to hope they don't get injured and hope that this isn't the year where things like kind of fall off the rails a little bit. So yeah, I'll be really excited to see how that works out for Justin. Though of course another team where he doesn't have any D or goalies, so I'll be curious to see how he could fill the rest of it out. But yeah, I just wanted to shout out that team for like 4 like really fun picks. I see reason for like Eichel. I think like we've discussed all these guys a lot. Like Eichel, was coming back from injury, and then he had another injury. There's like finger injury or thumb. So like, and then Mark Stone was out. Like, but his upside is crazy. Like he could be a first round guy. Elias Pettersson could be a 100-point guy. He like looked like that for the second half of last year. And Svechnikov is someone who we've talked about as like a potential 40-goal guy. So yeah, just wanted to throw those out.
Yeah, I'll shout out. Like, I think by this point in the draft, you just want to have the fewest question marks possible. And while you mentioned, Elon, that Eichel, Svechnikov, and Pettersson all disappointed last year, I feel like we know why. And I feel like we know we can expect better. Svechnikov is a guy who I am like a little hesitant to draft just because Carolina seems so equal and horizontal in how deployment is given. And in this draft, he actually went about 6 spots earlier than his mock ADP in all of our mocks has been. So like, I feel like that, like I would choose Jason Robertson was the next forward and then Jack Hughes. I'd prefer both of those guys to Svechnikov. Now, Svechnikov versus Forsberg, who went at the end of the round, is an interesting conversation. I mentioned that we're not expecting Forsberg to do what he did last season. The reason for that, as a reminder, because I think I just vaguely mentioned it, is that he shot twice his career shooting percentage last season, which helped him pick up 42 goals in 69 games, which put him on a 50-goal pace. And as much as I love Philip Forsberg, I don't think he's a 50-goal player, especially when he's still seeing those gosh darn like barely top line minutes. Like he's on the top line and he sees more time than anyone else, but at 5-on-5, he's still, we see guys see 15 and a half, 16 minutes a night at 5-on-5 playing on the top line. Philip Forsberg is lucky if he sees 14. Last year he saw 13 and a half. So I don't love that. And I am concerned. I'm more than concerned. I expect his shooting percentage to regress. And so I will knock him down from his 100-point pace last season. This is a guy who's never paced for more than 78. And aside from that, he's never paced for more than 67. I would have Forsberg as, slotted in as a 70, 75-point guy. At least we know like that breakout crazy upside is there. But I don't know if it's more there than it would be for anybody who doubles their shooting percentage in a season, which is honestly possible for just about any NHL player. We see it all the time. So yeah, I like Hughes and Robertson late in the 3rd round a fair bit. And then Zibanejad, like you said, Elon, in the top of the 4th round, pretty solid as a guy that wouldn't get out of the 2nd, sometimes even the 1st round, not that long ago. I'm just trying to see. We have Saros and Hellebuck as the next goalies off. No surprise there. Fox, Letang, Ekblad, Karlsson, Seider, Morgan Riley as the next D off the board. No surprise there. I guess Morgan Riley is he's a little further down based on last year's performances and Darnell Nurse or Zach Werenski, but not by a substantial enough amount to be like, whoa, you really skipped over. In fact, I would say Morgan Riley's pretty reliable of all those guys.
Yeah, he almost had 70 points last year. I think
Yeah.
last year, like, just points were so easy to come by that now a 70-point defenseman like isn't as special as it used to be. That used to be like a huge thing, and I definitely feel like there's no one challenging Morgan Riley at least this year. Maybe one day Topi Niemela or whoever, like there might be someone one day that
Yeah.
steals that job from Morgan Riley, but it's not happening this year.
So
Top power play on Toronto is pretty amazing.
yeah, and the last time Riley approached the 70-point pace, he has a 72-point pace in 18-19, and I was shouting from the rooftops, like, this isn't going to happen again because he scored 20 goals. Like, Morgan Riley is a 5, maybe 10 goal scorer. He put up 10 goals last season with great shot rates too. So I think that was part of it. He also had some power kill points, 3 shorthanded points for Morgan Riley last season, but he did get the bulk of his points this time more sustainably. He shot the way we'd expect him to shoot. He got 10 goals on 221 shots instead of 20 goals on 223, but he just had more assists. Like that was the difference. And I think like this looks like a way that Morgan Riley can repeat as a 65, 70 point player. When you're on the ice with Austin Matthews for so many minutes a night with a 60 goal scorer, you're in a pretty good spot to produce. So I like him as a safe pick. Elon, how do you feel about him going later than Moritz Seider?
Yeah, I think it's fine. Like Seider is like so amazing for peripherals, and I think he has a super high floor. In Detroit now, like, it's a bit of a, I'm hoping that Detroit is like going to score a lot more goals now that they brought in like Perron and like these different free agents that like to really sort of like elevate the team and be a more offensive team and finally not be like a basement dweller in the league. So I think Seider's like the clear top power play guy, and he's like so amazing for peripherals. So I'm not mad at that pick. I feel pretty confident in him. One thing I'm curious to look at is the goalies that go next. I feel like we're going to get into it with our Schmore Goalies Board episode, Brian, which is actually like next week, I believe, on the docket. We got to get to work on that, where we're going to tier all the goalies. And I think the big theme of that is going to be there aren't as many starters as there used to be. And you brought up a bunch of goalies who have been drafted so far. I feel like there's maybe only a handful, maybe a little more than a handful of like guys that are like guaranteed starters left in this draft pool. So I think I'm curious to see like which goalies go next and to look at those teams that like waited on goalie and then still are going to get one of these guys. I still think there's some really good gems out there that I wonder if the people who drafted like I don't know, an Ottinger or Saros or Hellebuck will be like, oh, maybe I should have waited. Or probably not. Like those guys have been, well, Ottinger maybe is the bigger question mark that maybe I would love to have been able to wait a little more for him. So actually it'll be fun to see.
With Ottinger.
Yeah,
like, I like maybe Demko goes before him, right? Like that would be the only, like, what other goalie might you draft ahead of Jake Ottinger?
I don't know, Jacob Markstrom, like
yeah.
But Ilya Sorokin, like maybe. But also, I think it's not as much about like who would I take first. It's more like, could the person who took Ottinger, JL, could he have gotten like a really awesome forward or defenseman and then still gotten a goalie similar to Ottinger? But we'll have to see. We'll have to wait. So something to track as we go through. Like now we're going to go through round 5, and then it's going to be all the way to the end of round 6 where we see what goalies are left. So that'll be fun. But let's get this going. And Brian, I guess it's somewhere we're going to have to end part 1 of this episode and transition. But how about let's go through a couple more rounds first. I'm curious to get this going here. Here's an interesting pick, by the way, while we're waiting for round 5 to start. Elias Lindholm. Is it? I know it's Elias Pettersson. Elias Lindholm. Okay, just to keep us on our toes. He's obviously in a new situation. He had that amazing season last year, putting up 82 points in 82 games, and 42 goals. But that was playing with Gaudreau and Tkachuk, who both aren't there anymore. And yeah, he's got Huberdeau, who's great. But to me, it's basically like a guy in a completely new situation, right? He has all new line mates. So he's someone who went in mid-round 4 before Elias, then Elias went, and I do think it's like, I wonder if that's a big swing. And again, I feel like you're hearing that a lot from me. It's like guys who like, I just wonder if it's like as sure a thing as further people. And Elias Pettersson also like had some downtime last year, and that could always happen again. But yeah, I don't know. Elias Lindholm, am I too down on him? Like I just feel nervous about him. Maybe I shouldn't be. Maybe he's someone that I need to get up to speed.
No, I'm absolutely with you. I would have taken Pettersson first if he was still on the board. I don't know that there's anyone else. Like clearly I've already expressed my love for Rube Hintz. Maybe I'd take Hintz ahead of Lindholm. Maybe Nick Ehlers. There's just that question mark, Elon. Like both his line mates from last year are gone. Yeah. So there's gonna be a learning period. And Huberdeau, I'm curious to see. Like I think Lindholm is gonna have to figure out how to work with Huberdeau's reported defensive deficiencies and still be a really effective player.
Well, and also, It's probable. Everyone's talking about it like it's for sure, right? That's like Lindholm will play with,
Yeah.
Huberdeau. But like it's also possible Kadri plays with Huberdeau, right? Like they have two good centers now after signing Kadri. And I just don't want to like guarantee, again, we're not in the first round, we're in the fourth round. So it's okay to take some swings here. And like, Shane is saying in the chat, Lindholm got the best assist man in the NHL. Not a big loss, I don't think. But, we think he did. He likely did, but it's not like as sure a thing. Maybe like I'm seeing some guys in round 5 here. Like just start round 5, JL after taking Ottinger. Then went Patrick Laine. I'm pretty stoked about Laine. Also, just got a really good guy to play with, and he's already someone that I know has had some red flags, but also has shown the ability to be like a 40 goal scorer himself if he puts it all together. Like I think that's a fun pick, and maybe someone I would consider over Elias Lindholm. Also, I guess we haven't really talked much about the eligibilities, right? Lindholm only C eligible, Laine left wing, right wing. I've just been kind of looking at it in terms of forwards and defense and goalies, but it'll be fun also at some point to see if like we're really starting to see a difference in the available wingers versus centers. Like Dylan Larkin, by the way, went 6. So he's the next C to go in this round. And again, like I don't know, maybe I kind of feel like I'd rather have Larkin than Lindholm just as a sure thing, top line, top power play.
Yeah,
I
won't
know, maybe
argue.
it's dumb.
No, not to pile on Brett, who made the pick, who's also
No, it could be a great pick.
Couple. So it could be a great pick, but yeah, I also would have my worries about Lindholm, as you've already said, and I'd rather still go. Like I'm still looking. Like I'm okay with taking guys who have flags or question marks. Of course, you're going to have to at some point, but I try not to take them before I have to. And I think Lindholm was a pick a little bit before you had to. Like John Tavares just went a full round later. And honestly, it would be a decision. Larkin almost went a full round later. These are both guys I consider. Another guy, not to pile on any picks that we don't like, but early in the 5th round, we've seen Brian Rust go off the board. 4th pick in the 5th round. I don't know, Elon. Like Rust, he's on my do not draft list. And Julien, who drafted him, picked him 60th overall. His ADP in our mock so far is 95th overall, which sounds righter to me. Like that's a couple rounds later. This seems really early for Brian Rust. And I think a lot of people who aren't so prepared necessarily going into their drafts are going to be like, oh yeah, Brian Rust looks great last year, but they don't have the context that he didn't look great towards the end of the year. And Rickard Rakell was in his spot. So how exactly is Brian Rust going to fare this year? I don't know, but I don't really want him on my roster while I wait to find out.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. I don't think I would have taken Russ. By the way, since we were piling on Brett for the Lindholm pick, I do like the Jacob Markstrom pick. That's like pretty good. Like that's what I'm talking about. Like I like the idea of waiting till like the 5th round, and then you get Markstrom, who could be like a top goalie, right? Like he's definitely the volume starter, which is what I want on a good team. I think Calgary probably is like the best defensive. Like they were already one of the best defensive teams in the league, and now they just got Mackenzie Weegar, like without having to give up any defense. So it's going to be a really good situation, I think, for Markstrom. So that's a really nice pick there. Brian, here's an interesting one for you, okay? And obviously we're jumping around a little bit. A few D have gone in this round. Werenski to start. Like Werenski, I think is a great pick. Hamilton, like could be an amazing pick. Like last year, Hamilton was being taken as like the 3rd D. And then he got injured and everything kind of fell apart. He wasn't the same. And like if he is back to what he was expected to be, like that could be great value. Then Quinn Hughes, Quinn Hughes, blah. There's a reason why he fell, because he's not great with peripherals, but he's going to get the points. I want to talk about Alex Pietrangelo at the end of the 5th round. And I hope it's okay to call out, like Shea Theodore hasn't even been taken yet. And Alex Pietrangelo just got drafted. And like, the way I see it, like I think Shea Theodore is the top power play guy, and it's not like Vegas is like has so many players like they used to, where they're going to run 2 even power plays. I feel like Jack Eichel and Mark Stone, the power play that they're on is going to be the top power play, getting most of the time, especially if like there's Marchessault. Like you put the 3 of them, and then Shea Theodore is the quarterback. And like Theodore, by the way, is coming off a season where he just had a 55-point pace. He averaged, me, Brian, with the shots, right? He averaged 2.6 shots per game, which is a little bit down from even the previous years where he's been above 3. I wonder if there's like some good value to be had. Like I guess Theodore hasn't even been picked yet, and now we'll see if someone in the draft now. But I'm just curious to get your take on him versus an Alex Pietrangelo, who really like last year, like to start the year was absolutely terrible. And yeah, we said on the podcast, don't worry, like he's just having some bad shooting luck. But still, at the end of the day, this is a guy who had no points in like the first 7 or so games, ends the year with 44 points in 80 games, which is a pretty good pace for the rest of the way. He's a bit of better peripherals, but I do just wonder, if like he shoots, he actually shot similar to Theodore last year. But I don't know. I'm curious to get your take. Like I just feel like Theodore's the one who I feel like has the big upside, and Petrangelo is like kind of safe, but not someone that I would take ahead of Theodore. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, I'm with you. I think Shea Theodore, who just went off the board to Tom, aka Hopplenuts, who does a great job on our Cupful newsletter. That's coming back this year. If you like, we have a newsletter about the league where we shout out interesting and fun and silly achievements through the year. And Tom does some great advice columns in there as well, that may or may not be completely serious. But Tom, yeah, grabbed Theodore 10th overall in the 6th round after Petrangelo went last in the 5th round. I'm just looking at some guys who are hanging at the top of the board, Elon, because I saw Chris Kreider go in the 5th round, 11th in that round. And I'm just pulling up. That means he was pick number 67. He was hanging around at the top of the draft board for a while. He went 5 picks later than his mock draft ADP. And this has been happening in all my mock drafts, actually. There's a few guys who hang out at the top of that list. Philip Forsberg is one of them. Chris Kreider's another. And right now, well, Nazem Kadri didn't have a team for most of the mocks we were doing before. So the context is a little different now, but he is now still one of the highest remaining players, the highest ranked remaining players going by last year's fantasy points per game. But Chris Kreider, I think where he was picked towards the end of the 5th round, pretty good value, right? Like he, like Brian Rust and maybe Philip Forsberg, they're going to get drafted really early. If you're in a league where people aren't paying such close attention to the numbers or someone's auto drafting, they're off the board. But if you're in a league with active folks and you're waiting for the right time to grab Chris Kreider, who, yeah, we don't expect to do as well as he did last year, because like Philip Forsberg, he had some shooting percentage patterns that just can't be replicated. Like on that power play where he was an absolute monster. We listen to a lot of reasons why it might be real. Is he playing from a different spot? Is he more effective from that spot? And really, I think it just comes down to the fact that he was converting at an unreasonable rate all season long from that bumper spot on the power play. To put a number to it, 40% shooter, Chris Kreider with the man advantage. Now in his career, he's still been high there. Like he's still been around the 25% mark. So I don't expect to see a whole bunch of that scoring fall off. But this is a 52 goal season from a guy who's never really paced for more than 25 or 30. The COVID shortened year in 2020. Oh, no, sorry. One of the COVID years, like 2 seasons ago in 2020, 2021, Kreider also had a great season, but he played 50 games and was also shooting 20%. So the last 2 seasons, Chris Kreider's pulled this 20% shooter card out of his back pocket. I'm still not sold it's sustainable. But I'd still this is the sort of guy who is going to regress, but that doesn't mean you should sleep on him at all. And I'm wondering how high you would take him, Elon. Like last year was the first time he's ever paced for more than 60 points. I'm thinking he could hit 70 this year. Like I'm willing to give him that, split the difference between his best previous career number, 60-point pace, and last year's 80-point pace.
Yeah, I think that where he got taken here is like good value for sure. Because even if he falls down to 40 goals instead of 50 goals, it's still a lot of goals. And who knows? Like, I think that a lot of it had to do with the power play, right? Like 26 of those goals of his 52 were on the power play. And they had a new coach, right? Gerard Gallant. Like, I'm not like a Rangers expert here, but I think it makes sense to say that like Kreider was probably used in a way on the power play that he wasn't before.
But, well, no, but this is what I was saying when everyone was saying like justify. I don't think that's it. Like, I don't think it was a new coach. I think it was like straight up shooting luck.
But what about, but he still did shoot a lot more, right? You can't take away the fact that he was averaging 3.2 shots per game when in the previous years he'd never been over 2.5. So even if his shooting luck isn't as good, he still clearly did something different, right? He got more ice time than he did before, and he used it to shoot more, and that's going to lead to scoring more. So I just think that for people that if you're looking like back in his previous history, like too far, it was like a different coach, and I think maybe a bit of a different role. So I think I'm agreeing with you. I don't think it's like 20% shooting percentage is very high. Like most people don't do that. And he still has a bit of an injury risk. I think people forget this. Like he used to go on runs and then get injured and be very frustrating. But, he's going to be playing with the same guy. He's going to have the same role on the power play. When I say the same guy, I mean like Savannah Jetta as the center. So I think that in the 5th round, that's pretty good value for someone who will fall off a bit, but maybe people are expecting him to fall off more than he will. So, hey, Brian.
Why don't we summarize
Why don't we
Okay.
summarize what happened in this round? And then I think let's end the show because it's been a long show. We've made the listeners go through a lot here. So why don't we sort of take a break and then we could come back and finish this thing off. But yeah, so round 6, we went up to Petrangelo there. Did we go? Okay, let me just give the full.
Let's go to the start of round 5.
Okay, we had Line, then Werenski, Hamilton, Rust, Nylander, Larkin, Quinn Hughes, Tavares, Markstrom, Burns, Kreider, Demko, Shabbat, Petrangelo, Trouba. So there was a bit of a D run there. Then Frederick Anderson, another goalie. Then Nurse, continuing the D run. Nurse is very interesting, right? Because like as more guys are coming up on Edmonton, his power play time just keeps going down, but he's so great for those peripherals. Anyways, then Scheifele, Braden Point, Pavel Buchnevich, Mark Stone. That could be great value, right? If he's actually healthy all year.
Huge. That's a fantastic. And I'll say the Braden Point pick too earlier also could also be big. We know Point struggled a lot last year and then was looking good in the playoffs and then had that like gruesome injury. But he still ended, even with like some really crummy runs. Braden Point still ended with a 72-point pace, and I still think he's good. He's got a shot at being a point per game pace player. So getting that in what round? The 6th round, along with Mark Stone. I mean, you've got a lot of guys who have that upside, but I think Point and Stone have some of the better cracks at getting point per game paces. And Point has, I think, upside. Whereas Scheifele, who went to pick before him, Scheifele is good. I'll put him down for a roughly point per game pace too, but I don't think he can really blow very far past that.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. I mean, actually, a lot of guys in this round have potential for point per game. Anyways, I'll keep going. Like Sorokin, who I think is a great, like waiting on goalies, and then so Chris started the draft with Ovechkin, then Matthew Tkachuk, Johnny Gaudreau. Then his next couple picks were D, Sider, and Quinn Hughes, and he waited on goalie. And then he gets a guy who, like, I feel like Sorokin in the right situation could be like the best goalie in the league. Like he could be Shesterkin, and it's just like the Islanders haven't played him as much, right? They've been playing Varlamov a lot, but last year we started to see Sorokin take more and more of a role, and so I wonder if this year he'll continue to get more start to inch his way into being one of these volume guys, especially like next year because Varlamov is going to be UFA after this year. So this could be like a really great value pick. Then anyways, after that, Malkin, another point per game guy, but he has to stay healthy. That's obviously the risk with him. Then Shea Theodore, who I talked about before. Matt Duchene was point per game last year, so
also
maybe he does it again.
Yeah, he's another guy. Like I'll lump in with Kreider and Forsberg and Kadri, who are hanging out at the top of draft boards for a long time, like as being great performers last year, but everyone's choosing guys who did worse last year but expect to do better this year. And I've shared my optimism on Matt Duchene. Like there might be fewer Philip Forsberg goals to assist on, but I still think he's going to have like a legit fantasy relevant season. I'd put him in the same category as like Pavel Buchnevich for next season, who went a few picks earlier.
Yeah, and then Drew Doughty went next, who, by the way, is a guy who's coming off an amazing year for the 39 games he played, right? He had 31 points in 39 games, 65-point pace. It's the best of his career. He's not that old, right? You think of like Drew Doughty as like really old. I don't know. Maybe it's the way he's missing those teeth in his beard. But like, he's only 32, so he still has some game in him if he comes back 100%. And everyone's so excited about Kevin Fiala coming to LA and what that's going to do for their ability to score more goals. Plus, they're like young players. Drew Doughty's still the clear top power play defenseman here, and he's good for peripherals. So I feel like Drew Doughty could end up being a real steal if he's actually able to stay healthy. Then we have Sam Reinhart, and then Noah Dobson, an exciting D who really showed himself to step forward next year. Last year, I should say, like after Pulak got injured that first time. So that ends round 6. Brian, how about I'll just hold on your comments? No, you have your hand up. No, what you got to say it. You got to say it.
Finish the recap for round 6. We shouldn't recap round 6 in the next episode. I want to get off and running with round 7.
Okay.
And the next one. But just to close this out, like my comment here is I think like Theodore Doughty and Dobson at the end of the 6th round, like that's where I would be so happy to start building my D group. We have Mike, who picked 12th overall, who's gone Hamilton and Doughty in rounds 5 and 6. I think that's pretty solid. And then Dobson was JL's first D pick, and Dobson was kind of hanging out at the top of the board too for a little while. And I like those a lot. I have to say, you know, we saw after after Hamilton went early in the 5th round, going in order just by D, we saw Quinn Hughes, then Brent Burns, then Thomas Chabot, Alex Pietrangelo, Jacob Trouba, Darnell Nurse. I would happily have Theodore Doughty or Dobson, who went after those guys before after Hamilton and before Quinn Hughes, who Ben Burnett has called empty calories. And I thought it was a good comment. I think
that was
fair.
Lewis who might have said
Lewis.
it. But those show
Okay.
shifts guys are all the same. But
Yeah.
it's interesting actually. Nick, the one who I was saying got McDavid, Kane, Forsberg, Zibanejad to start. I was curious what he'd do next. He went 2D in the turn there with Pietrangelo and Trouba. So he just decided to get that high floor with peripherals, even though giving up on like guys who maybe are going to get the most points. So that's an interesting strategy. Like it's a way to just feel confident that like I'm going to get my points. I may not get the most points, but I'm going to get I'm already getting a lot of points, like in terms from goals and assists for my first 4 picks. So from my D, I just want like solid guys I know are going to give me like 2 couple points per game at least. And then when they get an assist, it's already up to 5, as opposed to like taking defensemen who potentially, like Noah Dobson. I mean, there's still like a lot of peripherals to come there, but like, maybe guys that like don't have as much of a good floor. But okay, Brian, with that, let's end this show.
Oh, okay.
Take a
I was
break.
just going to mention one more thing, if you don't mind. This is the very last thing. Remember you
know
mentioned
that when I
Justin's
say
team? You mentioned Justin's team.
Yeah.
He's the only one left with no D. And his team is Eichel, Pedersen, Kaprizov, Svechnikov, Stone, and John Tavares. So I'm just going to say, going into the next episode, I'm going to be keeping my eye on Justin's team to see who his first D is and if I like him. Because like I wouldn't have minded having any of the guys I just mentioned as my number 1 D. So we'll see who he goes with. On the next episode of Keeping Karlsson.
He also doesn't have a goalie yet. So Justin's been all forwards, and I love all these forwards that you just mentioned. So yeah, now we just have to see how he rounds up that team. I think it's a fun strategy. But okay, Brian, let's end. Don't worry, by the way, you're worried about like not being able to, you've got to get it out now. The next episode, we're going to start recording it right now. For people listening, it's going to be in your feed. I'm going to drop them both at the same time. So let's take a break here and make sure to download part 2 for the rest of this draft, even though we're only done a third of the draft, but hopefully half of the draft time, the show time. So bye, everyone.
That's it?
Yeah, That's it. Sorry,
we're not going to do a full credit
roll. We'll do it at the end.
Okay.
All right. Yes! Welcome everybody to another episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the longest running fantasy hockey podcast in the world, hosted by a guy who just did this like an hour ago, so I didn't have time to come up with a funny joke. Okay, I'm your host, Elon Dabrowski, and with me to continue with part 2 of our mock draft commentary, it's my good friend, Brian Combe. Brian, how have you been doing since the last time we got behind the mic?
I've been doing great. Like, it's been a great 32 seconds or so, which is about how quickly we're making everyone draft, but I love that you're coming into this episode in hurry up mode. That is the fastest intro I've ever heard. And I'm with you. Like, let's keep going. I'm going to restart. We've already had 6 rounds of our mock live draft show. We're heading into round 7. If you didn't hear, go back to the first part of this. You'll hear all the settings, all like this for the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League settings, kkupfl.com for all the info on that. We'll put in the show notes too. But we've had 6 very eventful and interesting rounds. And Elon, you said I could carry over a thought from the 6th round.
I'll allow it.
Oh, thank you. Okay. So this is a weird time to just start. Don't listen to part 2 without part 1. Who does that? If you do it, let me know. Evgeny Malkin, I'll just shout out, coming after Mark Stone. I like both guys. That was in the middle of the 6th round. Both guys injury risks, but the payoffs could be huge for both of them. And Malkin's a guy that like I understand, and I mentioned this on our Patreon cast. Like, I've been burned so many times by Malkin. I'm not lining up to get burned by him again, but where he's going, I might get burned by him again. Like, I am willing. I am interested. Mark Stone, for what it's worth, went 77th overall in this mock, which is about 10 picks later than he's been going so far in our other couple mocks. We've run over 20 so far, and Malkin went about 8 picks later. And I think actually the difference there for both of them, Elon, is we're seeing, I think, more D picked like early, more D picked earlier than we've seen in a lot of the mocks. And a lot of that is really sort of just up to the flow of the draft, right? Like, D are going to go at one point or another. It's hard to really know. Like, I don't want to pay too much attention to their overall ADP. I want to know where they rank amongst other D. Of course, I'll have my tiers, but relative, I think they'll always go like the same distance from one D to another. But sometimes it's going to happen in the 3rd round. Sometimes it's going to happen in the 7th round. Sometimes it's going to happen in the 11th round. So if you are drafting D, I would not be paying too much attention to their overall ADP if you're using some other source or data set, because that's not going to help you, because your draft is going to be different than all those other mocks where the defenseman went to different, the D runs happened at different moments.
Yeah, like you said, Brian, you have your tiers and you want to make sure you get the guys you want, like one guy from each tier that you were planning on getting someone from. Speaking of D, like since we last talked about Noah Dobson going at the end of round six, JL also on the turn got his second D in Rasmus Dahlin. This was another team, by the way, that had no D or goalie to start. He had Kachuk, Huberdeau, Meyer, Ottinger. So, sorry, he did have a goalie, Patrick Laine, and then he got his first 2D in Dobson and Dahlin. So two DDs who I think have like a lot of upside. We're talking top power play guys. Maybe one day Owen Power challenges, but we're not too worried about that. And Dahlin, from that Joe Yerdon interview, he said like we have another gear to see from Dahlin, and maybe this is the year. Like that late of a pick, I think it's fun because there could be a huge breakout coming. Like he did kind of have a breakout in 2019-20 when he had 40 points in 59 games, and he kind of repeated that this past year, a 54-point pace. But still, I feel like that's kind of disappointing. Like I think if he ends up with the same season again, this pick will be disappointing, like compared to like a Devon Taves, Miro Heiskanen, who went as the next 2D as this draft continues. In that case, I think that like Taves and Heiskanen could do a little bit better, though I guess Heiskanen also is someone who has to show us that he could actually do it. I have a lot of faith in him. But yeah, Dahlin and Heiskanen are actually pretty similar as like super talented defensemen that we know like are offensively inclined and like have the ability to really like, and also super high draft picks, right? And it's just now a matter of like taking that role and running with it and taking that step forward. I guess Dahlin has been the top power play in Buffalo, and it's more just been the team around him hasn't been a team that you could put up a lot of points with. And then Heiskanen has been behind John Klingberg at times. They're just not getting that full role. So I think both of those guys are interesting. It's fun to see them both going in the 7th round. And then Charlie McAvoy going next. He's amazing. He's just missing some time. I think otherwise he would have gone a lot earlier. But once you're in round 7 here and you're getting Charlie McAvoy, as long as Mr. Halsey, Brett, is confident in himself for those first few weeks of the season to maybe just pick some good guys off of free agency to make up for the fact that he has to start with McAvoy and IR, that'll be a really fun bonus that he gets when he finally comes back. Man, Brian, this round is blazing by, including 5 centers went in the first 7 picks of the round. Pavelski, Kuznetsov, Kadri, Norris, and Trevor Zegras. Do you see those guys as all being in a similar tier, or do you think one of them was like an especially big steal to get all the way down at round 7?
I think they're all similar. I mean, okay, I'll say what you want to hear, Elon, which is I think Kuznetsov could be.
I wasn't even thinking that.
A cut above. I'm gonna say Kuznetsov and Norris could both be a cut above. Pavelski could be there too, and I don't want to shortchange Joe Pavelski. It's been a while, or like ever, since we've seen what is he? He'll be 38. He just turned 38. Since we've seen a 38-year-old put up an incredible season. That said, 36-year-old Pavelski, 75-point pace, 37-year-old Pavelski, 81-point pace. And neither one looked so questionable either. Like we dug and we're like, why is this happening? Why isn't this sustainable? And you put them sort of in the same place that we've put someone like Max Pacioretty in recent years. Is just he's an older dude who found a new way to do the things that he does really well, to fit in and play his role, but not just be a role player, be like a top flight guy. I'm worried a little bit about where he lands and what his job is with the new coach and setup and system in Dallas. So he's not someone I would draft. Like I would like Kuznetsov and Norris the most out of that center group. But, when it comes to Kadri and Zegras, I could see Pavelski fitting in pretty comfortably next to those guys.
Yeah, I guess it's pretty fun comparing Zegras to Pavelski. Both on very different ends of their career. It's just a matter of, are they going to intersect this year, or is it going to take another year before Zegras shoots ahead, as he clearly will very soon. Zegras is going to be a star in the league, top line, top power play. It's a fun pick, but I think it's the right spot for him, round 7. I could imagine him going higher in some drafts just because of the excitement and the unbound upside. But I think some centers that went earlier, like we talked last round, like Scheifele, Braden Point. I'm not ready to take a Zegras over those guys. So I'm happy to see that Zegras fell. We got a smart group here drafting. By the way, the Heiskanen pick was Justin's first pick. That was something we were tracking, right? Kaprizov, Eichel, Svechnikov, Pettersson, Tavares, Mark Stone. Then he gets Heiskanen. That's pretty good, right? To get Miro Heiskanen as your top D. I think that's a good guy to start building around. Okay, Brian, here's a question I want to throw at you. Some goalies have gone, and I still think we've seen some good starters here. And for me, in fantasy, give me a starting goalie that I don't think is terrible. And I'm pretty happy just because who knows, how it'll shake out and things are unreliable. We got Marc-Andre Fleury going at the end of the seventh. And like, he's someone I think people, he's old. He's like Pavelski, right? And maybe you can be like, oh, this guy's old. Like maybe he's not able to do it anymore. You look at Minnesota, a team that people generally think is a good team. This is kind of a situation like with Shesterkin, where like, I'll bet you a lot of people may not even remember who the backup goalie is, because obviously they traded Cam Talbot. And if you recall, it was to the Sens for one of your longtime favorites, Brian, Philip Gustafsson, who I think is the backup now on Minnesota. Like obviously long term they have Jesper Wallstedt, and that's the plan. So that's why they didn't need to hold on to like Kakkonen or whatever. Like that's the future. But for this year, Marc-Andre Fleury at 37 years old, I could see him being a volume starter on this team if he can hold up, and he hasn't had like too many injury troubles lately. So I think that's a really good value here, and a goalie I'd be really happy to get so late.
I'm liking the goalies I'm seeing. And in the mocks I've done, this is about where I jump into the fray. So we saw Fleury go at the end of the seventh. And that would be the signal to me that like, okay, Brian, like try and grab a goalie next. Fleury's sort of been the bellwether, if you will. Right after Fleury went, we saw 3 goalies picked in the next 5 choices. And those 3 goalies were Darcy Kemper, Tristan Jarry, and Elvis Merzlikins. Jack Campbell goes a few picks later, which really leaves the only starters that you could have faith in, like could comfortably have faith in. Okay. And I'm not counting John Gibson in that group. I'm not counting Carter Hart in that group. Really just Bobrovsky and Binnington are the last guys on the board that I know are going to be workhorses. And I believe it's more likely than not that they're going to turn in pretty decent, worthy performances. Of course, we could see those come from Hart and Gibson too, but now that we've decreased the value of a save, volume is not as king as it was before. So yeah, this is about where I see myself trying to pick up my first goalie in my drafts. These are the starters who are still out there who could, honestly, like Tristan Jarry. No respect. I really am surprised at how late he's going in a lot of the drafts. Elvis Merzlikins, we thought would be huge last year. It was a struggle. We've read about why on The Athletic. Like, he's working through a grieving process of his friend, and just was not seemingly steady.
Yeah,
so,
and also Columbus was like in a total rebuild and just traded Seth Jones for Adam Boqvist, who like in the future I think Columbus has some good goalies, and maybe even as soon as this year. But like, yeah, I think like there were reasons for Merzlikins not have a good year.
Systemic changes, and now you've got Nick Blankenberg looking like he's earned a spot on the top pairing potentially with Zach Werenski, and like there wasn't really that solid a top pair last year at any point. Except at the end when Blankenberg was kind of coming on the scene. So that alone could be reason enough to have a little more faith in Merzlikins this season. So yeah, I like these goalies. And now Bobrovsky has also gone in the 8th round here. And again, it's not about what round the goalies are going in, because your draft might be different. It's all relative, right? Keep that in mind. So that leaves, I'm looking at the goalies left, Elon. Binnington, Thompson, Hart, Gibson, Grubauer, Jake Allen, James Reimer, Ville Husso. Like, I think that's the list of starters remaining, and they're all a step down from the guys we've just named. Of course, you can take a swing on a Matt Murray or on a Pavel Francouz or an Alexander Georgiev, but the guys I just mentioned in that group before are the next group of guys that I would expect to start at least 50 games without sweating it. And neither of them, I feel, are nearly as likely to hit or be successful or worth a roster spot all season long as the group that's just gone off the board.
Yeah, I think we definitely hit an inflection point here. And I think it makes sense. Like, everyone pretty much has a goalie. What teams don't have a goalie? I guess I'm seeing Dylan doesn't have a goalie yet. Barkov, Hedman, Landeskog, Ehlers, Larkin, Malkin, Devon Taves, and Mackenzie Weegar. So he's got 3 D. So I guess he could always trade a D for a goalie to someone. And then actually the next team, Tom's team, doesn't have a goalie either. I guess we don't need to read through the whole players. Oh, and Julian's team. So yeah, there's still 3 teams without a goalie. And you've mentioned some guys left that are left, Brian, in terms of goalies on the board. But yeah, I think like when Jack Campbell, Darcy Kemper, these are like they're interesting goalies in this round, right? Like guys who have had like good stretches, now are on new teams, but the team is like paying them lots of money. So I like a pick like that. Like I know there's like a little bit of risk, especially with like a Jack Campbell, because I know he struggled a bit last year, and like Stuart Skinner. I guess I do wonder if Jack Campbell's a little risky, but at this point in the draft, I think it's a great pick, and that actually went to Justin, who again, the guy who got Haskin in the last round before that hadn't had any goalies in D. We had a specific question in the chat here from Andy S, being like, "How do you like my team so far?" So we might as well just take a look there. And Brian, did you pause the draft, by the way?
The draft is paused. We finished the 8th round.
Honestly, I'm good at this point to just like
roll?
let it roll, and then we'll just like talk through as it goes.
Okay.
Because
maybe we'll pause every. But well, at least let's recap.
Okay, yeah. Well, anyways,
picks.
let me go to Andy's team here, which I think he's done a really interesting thing, and I'm very curious to get your take, because he did something different than what I generally do. But he like went D goalie to start. He had Makar and then Vasilevsky. So it's almost like, yeah, okay, I've locked in my goalie in D. I don't have to think about it for a while. But then he took Jason Robertson in round 3. Then he went another goalie in D. He got Hellebuck and then Brent Burns. So at this point, he's got 2 high-end goalies in Vasilevsky and Hellebuck, and then he's got 2 high-end D in Makar and Burns. Burns obviously is going to be the top power. Well, I shouldn't say obviously, but like to me, it seems like clear that he's going to be the top power play guy in Carolina, which is a spot that has been very fruitful over the years to guys like D'Angelo and Dougie Hamilton. And then he went with Point, Giroux, and Stützle. So, he's getting a lower end group of forwards compared to some of the others. His like forwards are now Robertson, Point, Giroux, and Stützle. But these are all still like solid guys, like not superstars, but he's getting his superstars in terms of the goalies and D. So yeah, what do you think of the strategy? Is this something I feel like I might be too wimpy to try this strategy? Like I'd want my superstar forwards, but at the same time, yeah, I feel like I would have gone Makar first as good, and then I would have probably not taken Vasilevsky, and I would have taken like one superstar skater, and then maybe get the next goalie the next round. But yeah,
well,
it'll be interesting to see how it works.
One forward in your first 5 picks is definitely a bold move. We saw Edward took 2 forwards in his first 5 picks, but everybody else I'm looking at had at least 3. And I think, I don't know. Like, this is why you mock, right? I feel like Andy's trying something out. And in the mock drafts I've done, I've tried basically my biggest strategy. I know what I'm going to do with forwards, but I've been trying to change how much I prioritize D or how much I prioritize goalie, moving them up my list, moving them down my list. I feel like Andy's saying, okay, what if I built my team around defense and goalie? And I just feel like, I don't, I like Jason Robertson's that first forward in 5 picks. I said I liked the Point pick in round 6. Now he's got him with Giroux and Stützle with in the 7th and 8th rounds. I think it's just hard. I think you want that superstar like firepower, like the on the forward end. And I can't say, I mean, we'll see how the rest of the draft shakes out, but I find in my teams, if I don't have forwards I can rely on, then I'm not sure how competitive I'm not comfortable. Like I can get by without defense I can rely on. I can scrape by without defense or goalies that I can really rely on, but forwards are kind of the non-starter. I guess you're hoping like, hey, Point and the Stützle pick could be huge, right? Like if you think about who, like Elon, do you know who Stützle played with last year?
Oh yeah, like not exciting players for sure. And he's
not
still
who's
really
going to be playing with this year. Yeah, like he played with Alex Formenton and Connor Brown were his 2 most regular line mates, and now there's a chance that like Alex DeBrincat and Claude Giroux could be his next. And he had a 60-point pace with those guys as a sophomore in the league, who still like wasn't really getting great treatment from his coaching staff earlier in the year. So I think this could be really huge, like a giant upgrade in line mates. Of course, the upshot or the downshot is that he might not have as much power play opportunity, depending if he's the odd one out, which we'll have to wait and see. But I could see Stützle performing like a top end forward, and that would be really good news for Andy, who's going to need to find a lot of forwards who can perform like a top end forward or have that potential.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to like the way he's like sort of taking, like, now that he avoided like the top end forwards to go for D and goalie, it's fun now to take some swings on some guys who like, decent enough floors, but like, potential to do a lot better than their draft position. Like Stützle I think is like maybe in the end, like some guys who went after him, like Zuccarello, 90 points. He's playing with Kaprizov. It seems like a pretty sure bet to do something similar, like, Tyler Bertuzzi, like, Tara Vinen, guys who have done it before and have been solid. And you just kind of expect them to do what they did recently. Stützle is like that, like upside swing, which I think there's a very good reason to expect it, but it's not as a sure thing. But maybe if you don't have these like superstar forwards, you have to take someone who has the highest potential. Like, I don't think Teuvo Teravainen is going to turn into a superstar forward. I think we know what he is, but Stützle, we don't know yet. He might just be the 60, 70 point guy, or he may still have this like extra gear. But okay, Brian,
Yeah.
so
Let's
let's
I'm
go.
gonna recap. And I'll also just throw in there, like Claude Giroux averaged 70 points or had a 70-point pace last season. And like the seasons before, 65 points, but the season in 18-19, that's a long time ago now, but he still was an 85-point player not so long ago. So like, I
Well,
don't think
and
the
also
upside, it's
even
not Stützle like upside, but I think there is upside for Giroux this year. I think he's sort of being counted out as like a 60, 65 point kind of old man. And I think there's a decent chance he can break 70.
I mean, don't forget, like last year, his total points are pretty meaningless, right? Like, who cares what he did overall? Because part of it was on Philly, a terrible team, and
Exactly.
then part of it was on Florida, where he was like on Philly, he had 42 points in 57 games. Then in Florida, he had 23 points in 18 games, well above a point per game. So it was like two completely different seasons. So if he gets an Ottawa or a Florida-like situation in Ottawa, I definitely wouldn't be surprised to see him be a point per game guy. So I like that swing also for sure.
All right,
Okay,
I'm going to recap round 7 and 8, and we've started round 9. So at the top of round 7, we have Dahlin, Pavelski, Kuznetsov, Kadri, Norris, Taves, Devon Taves, Trevor Zegras, Miro Heiskanen, who actually went later, I want to mention, in this draft than he's been going in a lot of mocks. I think he's like hyped and reasonably so, but I'm finding in some mocks he's like too high. It's like we're getting really excited. When a player's about to break out, everyone wants to reach for him, be like, yeah, I called it. I knew this was coming. But sometimes it's still like a little early to do that. So I'm seeing that happen with Heiskanen this year, but I think this was a reasonable place in the middle of the 7th round for Justin to get him. Then McAvoy, Giroux, Jesper Bratt, Jonathan Marchessault, potential top line, Jonathan Marchessault. That's nice. Marc-Andre Fleury, and then Anze Kopitar ended the 7th round, which I'd put him in with that group of C's that went earlier in the round. Zegras, Norris, Kadri, Kuznetsov, Pavelski, like he's in there in that discussion somewhere. Then the 8th round went Darcy Kemper, Evan Bouchard. That feels early to me as a D, but Mackenzie Weegar went next, and I'd rather Bouchard. So either they're both early or we're just at that point. I'll have to see who's left on the board. Tristan Jarry, Elvis Merzlikins, Tim Stützle, Drake Batherson, Jack Campbell, Matt Zuccarello. That could be huge value in round 8 if he stays stapled to Kaprizov and does what he did last season. Like that value stands out a lot. Followed by Mackenzie Weegar, Troy Terry, Tyler Bertuzzi, who's also been, we need a name for the guys who hang out at the top of the draft board but don't get taken. Sergei Bobrovsky, Teuvo Teravainen, and Robert Thomas ends the 8th round. We're now partway through the 9th round. Elon, any thoughts on the 7th or 8th rounds before we move on to the 9th and 10th?
yeah, I guess Evan Bouchard is interesting. Like, eventually, I think he's going to take over for Tyson Barrie. I'm sure, like, if Edmonton had the option, they would just get rid of Tyson Barrie right now and open up that cap space. But since they can't, maybe they use him as the only, like, value he brings, which is on the top power play, then, like, buried on the third pairing with, like, a Broberg who's coming up. But yeah, Bouchard really got moved around. Also, like, on sometimes he was top pairing and on sometimes he wasn't. Like his ice time at the start of the year when he had this like really nice start, he was seeing like above 21 minutes a game. By the end of the season, he was falling down to less than 20 minutes per game. So it'll just be interesting to see how Woodcroft decides to use Bouchard. And like definitely the upside is there, but he's going to need the ice time. Like I'd be a little nervous about banking on a guy who wasn't like, I still want my defensemen in the rounds 8, 7 to like be guys that I expect to play more than 20 minutes per game, like for sure. Like even like looking at some guys that went in round 9 now, we're seeing the first defensemen are like Klingberg, Seth Jones, and Erik Karlsson. And like Karlsson like is tricky because of the injuries. Klingberg and Seth Jones I think are guarantees to play big minutes. Klingberg I guess is like, I just feel like if Anaheim's smart, they play him a lot, give him the best
I think
opportunities.
He's a guarantee.
Yeah, because you're going to want to trade him at the deadline, make the most of this 7 million you're spending to like boost up his value, then get a first round pick or whatever out of him after he's like clicking so well with Trevor Zegras and Troy Terry. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'd rather just take one of those guys. Maybe Bouchard has a higher upside, but I'd be a little nervous that the coach could like ruin me. Like I don't want a guy who I have to be getting to the head of Woodcroft to confirm that. And like Uyghur on Calgary is also like a very interesting pick, right? Like sort of like feels out of nowhere. Like he's had some huge seasons in Florida, but now he's in a new situation. But I have heard like rumblings that Uyghur, like he could be on the top power play. Like we don't know. Like he's going to a team that has Rasmus Anderson, Noah Hannafin. These aren't like guys who like are insane and like no way he bumps like one of them from the top power play. So I feel like Uyghur, if he has a good camp and if they like how he's looking there, that's an opportunity he could have that would like skyrocket his value. So I think like a lot of drafts that happen like once training camp have happened, like we'll know more and we'll know whether Uyghur is worth a high pick or whether you just want to leave him to the end because he's just like a guy who's going to play a lot and probably be like a 40-point guy like similar to Noah Hannafin.
Yeah, and based on what we know today, I wouldn't take that chance. Like Rasmus Anderson's still on the board. He earned the job last season and like looked like a new player in January. Like something clicked, something happened, and I have to think coaching had something to do with that. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, well, the coaches built this guy. They want to keep using him. Like he's doing what they said. Everything's working. Everyone's happy. And here comes Mackenzie Weegar into the sad Calgary locker room. Did you see the video? That
yeah,
Calgary,
it's like too small.
It
I don't know.
it was really
People
funny.
really made a meal out of that.
Yeah, I mean,
hey, let me ask you something about Uyghur.
Okay.
No, it was funny.
Yeah.
So like back in round 6,
like I'd be sad going to like a really sad locker room.
I guess. I mean,
think of your workplace. Like if your workplace goes from like, the coolest, like whatever tech company in the world with slides or like catered lunches or whatever, and then you just go to like a cubicle with fluorescent lighting.
I mean, what do you care more about, the locker room or like, I don't know, like how often do they spend in the locker room versus the ice?
I guess so. But you want to feel cool when you walk into the locker room.
So they got to get on that, I guess. But yeah, back in round 6, as I was saying, like we had Jacob Trouba and Darnell Nurse, two guys who we know won't be on the top power play, but like we are so reliable for those peripherals. I wonder if Mackenzie Weegar like has that in him now, and also maybe he'll just get more ice time than like on a more stacked Florida team. Like I think there is opportunity for him to have that kind of upside even if he's not on the top power play. So I think that's actually, the more I think about it, I think it's just one of these things where it's hard to like wrap our head around it because it's just a new situation. I think he could end up earning that pick, though. Again, like I said, Klingberg, Seth Jones, Karlsson. Then actually there was another run to start the 10th round here. Tony DeAngelo, Damon Severson, Jacob Chikrin, and Jeff Petrie. So 4 actually very different guys in like very different situations. DeAngelo jumps out at me as potentially great value, like same as last year, right? Like he was going to a new team, and like at that point we didn't know if he's like, oh, is he going to have behavioral issues and not end up finishing the season? He ended up having this great year. Now this year it's like we know that he's like pretty reliable to like play out the season and not like get kicked off the team at this point, but also Philly seems like a dumpster fire, but also he's like the top power play guy. So I like that. Like DeAngelo to start round 10 seems like a really like good value pick for me.
I agree. Yeah. And I'm with you. Like Bouchard and Weegar in the 8th round were the only D to go. And I would have rather like any of the 9th. I'd rather Klingberg, Jones, Karlsson, DeAngelo. And then we saw Severson, Chikrin, Petrie. Like that's probably where I think Bouchard and Weegar belong. Krug and Byram both went shortly after. Byram's an interesting one. We're almost in the 10th round, so we'll recap it all when we get there. But 2 picks that I liked in the 9th, Elon, I like Jordan Binnington. Like he was all alone there as like the last goalie on the board that I have some faith in starting a ton of games and doing pretty well with them. And yes, my faith is restored. It's not restored, but I'm ready for my faith to be restored in Binnington.
Well, let's play that same game we played with Fleury and with who was the other guy in Shesterkin. Who's Binnington's backup? Like, do people know? Like, I feel like it fell under the radar a little bit. It's definitely someone who I don't expect to pull a Ville Husso. It's Thomas Greiss, who has had a great, solid career. I shouldn't say great, but like, he's been a reliable guy for years. But he's 36 and he's like a halak, right? He's there.
He's like a halak, exactly.
Yeah. He's not
and
there.
And I feel
to,
like that was by
starts.
design. Like I feel like St. Louis was like, clearly Binnington can't handle being pushed for the job. So we're just going to bring in someone who is never going to be expected to take the job. And it's been a while since Tomas Greiss has put together some consistent performances. So I think this could be just what the doctor ordered for Jordan Binnington. And Cole Caulfield also going in the 9th round early between Binnington and Klingberg. Just for context, I was going to say I like this value, but it seems right. Like looking at the context for the forwards going around him, we saw Trocheck, Thompson, Boldy, Raymond, and Besser all go, like Caulfield sandwiched in the middle of those guys. That seems right. Matt Boldy seems like the one out of place, and our mock ADP would confirm that that's true.
I guess Boldy, like such a high end prospect. If like, like he's gonna be great. He already was great last year. The obvious question is just who's he playing with, right? Now that Fiala's gone, he might not have the most exciting line mates. We'll have to kind of see, and that makes him a little risky. I love the Caulfield pick. I think I'd rather have him than like a Teuvo Teravainen or a Tyler Bertuzzi from the round before. Like Caulfield, yeah, he's young. Like it's not a sure thing, but like once Marty St. Louis took over, he like was scoring goals almost every single game, and now he's gonna he's a year older. He's like a sure shot, top line, top power play, not getting sent to the minors this year. Like it's just like he's playing with Suzuki, maybe with Slavkovsky or whoever. Like you heard me like hemming and hawing about who to pick from the Habs in that draft I did with Andrea, David, and Ben a few episodes ago. But like I just feel like Caulfield is like a really close to a sure thing to like be like whatever out of 25 30 goal scorer and then upside for more, and he's going to get the greatest deployment possible on the Habs. So I think that's a really fun pick and could end up, like what I was saying before about Andy taking Stützle late. You kind of have to take a swing. Like this is like if you get in the 9th, like a guy who I think has a really high floor based on his role on the team, but like also like a really high ceiling. Like it's possible that Caulfield, he could do better than I wouldn't be so surprised if he's like better than Brian Rust, who went in round 5, or like Matt Duchene, who went in round 6. It's just like, I feel like, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I think that there's a really good chance that he could really overperform 9th round. Yeah. And there's some other guys here that I feel the same about. But I guess I could let you, okay, let me throw out one other guy to you, since then I could let you talk for a while. How about the pick of, Logan Thompson down in the 10th? Like we were talking about how like it seemed like all those goalies were going, Jack Campbell like went, Bobrovsky.
8 picks after Binnington, for context, much more than 8 picks after Binnington, like 15 picks after Binnington.
Yeah, like with this news that Robin Lehner's out for the year, like I don't really believe in Laurent Brossoit. Like I don't think he can handle being more than like a backup. And Logan Thompson is like for sure like young, and it's a small sample size, but he put up really good numbers last year. Like there's a chance that he's like Nettinger, sorry, I keep saying it wrong. Ottinger. Like last year, Ottinger hadn't played much. We had seen a little bit of him, and he seemed pretty good. Now Logan Thompson comes in now this year. He's 25. Last year he played 19 games. He had a .914 save percentage. I expect Vegas to be a better team if everyone can stay healthy, and I see a really good path for him to be a starter that plays like a lot of games. So to get him all the way down in the 10th round, mid 10, I feel like that's the kind of goalie I'd love to get late. Like, it won't, not a guarantee, and he could just end up like flaming out and go back to the minors. Like he's going to be eligible to be sent down if somehow Vegas can like trade for a goalie. Like this could all change if they decide, okay, we need someone, and then they go after. We've seen some guys like potentially on the block. People are talking about rumors since Lehner's injury was announced. But I just think like Logan Thompson is a really fun swing here with like super high upside. So yeah,
me too. He went ahead of Ville Husso, who was the next goalie taken a full, 14 picks later, and Georgiev right after Ville Husso. But I think Logan Thompson, if he remains the starter, I don't know if he's an NHL starter, but I'm open to seeing if he can act like one for long enough. And I think Bruce Cassidy is going to be cognizant of this and builds defensive teams. I think he might be able to find a way to make this work and help Logan Thompson out, even if he's not quite up to the level of an NHL starter. We should go back and recap a bit, Elon, because we left everyone at Rob Thomas at the end of the 8th round. Following that, we had Vincent Trocheck to lead off the 9th. Then I'm just going to name a bunch of guys. Here we go. Tage Thompson, Jordan Binnington, Cole Caulfield, John Klingberg, Matt Boldy, Lucas Raymond, Seth Jones, Erik Karlsson, Brock Besser, Tyler Seguin, Pierre-Luc Dubois, Taylor Hall, and Zach Hyman to end round 9. You heard me pause on Hall, but I'll keep summarizing, and then I'll go back there. In the 10th round, it started with Tony DeAngelo, followed by Severson, Chychrun, Petrie, Clayton Keller, who, man, I would pick earlier in this draft if it weren't for those first 2 months. I've been on this, right, on the show before. I got burned so hard by the Isles last year and their kooky, crazy schedule that wrecked all their players' value. And while I held on, hoping that, okay, I should have listened to sunk costs, and just gotten rid of them and cut my losses there. Anyway, I don't want to make the same mistake with any Coyote this year. Like, I really like Clayton Keller. I like what he did last season. It looks sustainable. I see a new coach who's built a system that works for Keller. A lot of the personnel there is the same, but those first 2 months, which we talked about on our schedule show, where Arizona's basically never at home, has a 14-game road trip, spends an entire month or more between home games. That worries me. So that's a reason to bump Clayton Keller down. But let me finish the 10th round here. Adrian Kempe, Torrey Krug. I like that pick at this point. Bowen Byram, Logan Thompson, Nico Hischier, Tomas Hertl, Blake Wheeler, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Rasmus Anderson to end the 10th. And then in the 11th, Cam Talbot goes off the board. Then Sam Bennett, Matt Barzal, Shane Gostisbehere, Alex Tuck, Valerie Nichushkin. Very interesting to me that both those guys go back to back. I think they both showed some great upside towards the second half of last year in deployment they'd never seen before, and have like huge breakout potential this year to be worth much more than the 11th round pick they were drafted at. So I like those. Followed by Ville Husso, Alex Georgiev, Toffoli, Suzuki, Justin Falk, Bo Horvat, David Perron, and Victor Arvidsson to end the 11th round. Elon, I have some thoughts, but how about I'll throw to you? I'm sure you have like 14 from all those names in the order in which I mentioned them.
Yeah, I don't really know how much time we'll have to cover all those thoughts. All I'll say is I think at this point in the draft is kind of where you could win your draft, right? Like, hopefully in the first few rounds, you've just gotten superstars, guys you know are going to be amazing. And now here is where I think it's fun to take some swings. Like, so for example, a pick that maybe I wouldn't make is like, I don't know, like a David Perron, like Bo Horvat. Like, I think they could be good. I think, but like, you know, they're not going to be too amazing. And I know David Perron, I guess I'm always like too far down on, but I feel like now he's not even like necessarily a top liner now that he's on Detroit, which is actually very impressive for Detroit, right? That like they have a top line and Perron maybe doesn't cut it, even though like they used to be a team that didn't even have enough players to fill a top line. But you know, like some picks, like, you know, compare that to, I guess maybe I'm showing myself to be like too much of a Habs fan or something, but Nick Suzuki going in this range, like a top line, top power play guy, you know, Tomas Hertl. I guess with centers, maybe like good centers are falling more than wingers, which is another reason maybe to take wingers early, because you're seeing a lot of these awesome centers falling because I guess people just have too many of them.
And when you say centers, Elon, you're saying center, like C only players.
C
like
only,
these guys
yeah.
are only center eligible. We should mention we're using Yahoo's eligibilities here on this Fantrax draft too.
Yeah. Great job, Kevin, for copying everything over. Yeah, there's just a lot of centers actually that fall. I think there's a really good reason to just not draft too many centers at the start, because you can get some good guy like Nico Hischier. I like. You know, I also like I guess I said Matt Barzal, or I'm not sure. Like he could obviously has the upside to be more. Sam Bennett is an interesting pick. There's so many names, Brian, but Bennett is like someone I'm very worried about, actually. Like, he's not someone I'm going to pass on him.
He's a do not draft guy for me unless it's really late. Like, I'm not going for him in the 11th, especially not before Tuck and Nichushkin and Toffoli and Suzuki and David Perron. I think in the 11th is also great value.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say about Toffoli. That's a guy who could be huge, right? Like on Calgary, if it's gonna be like obviously who gets that spot. If we're gonna assume it's gonna be Lindholm and Huberdeau on the top line, that other spot could be amazing. And if also on the top power play, like I feel like Toffoli could end up being like a point per game easy if he gets that deployment. Of course, it could be Mangiapane. With Sam Bennett, by the way, just the reason I'm concerned is that Huberdeau's gone and he's had all of his success in his whole career. He's had a long career. The only time he's had success is playing with Huberdeau, and also he's not even guaranteed like top six. Like Anton Lundell is nipping at his heels, and I wouldn't be surprised even if Lundell sooner before later like ends up taking over. So yeah, that's the reason I'd avoid him.
And we went deep into Bennett's numbers. Thanks very much to John Newhold, listener and tier one participant competitor, who like showed the disparity in Bennett's home and away stats, and how like whatever's happening when Bennett's at home, I don't know if it's friendly counting or line matching or a combination of both, but Bennett's stats on the road were awful, to the point that if like no matter how well he was doing at home, if I had a full lineup and Bennett was playing an away game, I'd move him to the bench. Like I would not want him in my lineup. He was that bad. He was basically like free agent fodder on the road, which is not something that you want to put up with over the course of a 82 game season. But yeah, I think this 11th round, like Perron fell according to our mock ADP so far. Perron fell 2 rounds than where he's normally gone. Like 9th round Perron sounds righter than 11th round Perron here. So I like that. I think at this point in the draft, you are looking for upside. Like you're not looking necessarily for the guy who did the thing last year. You're looking for the guy who showed that he could do the thing last year and can actually come and deliver this year. So like Bennett would be an example of the former. And then you've got, I'd say Perron, you've got Toffoli, Nichushkin, Tuck, Oliver Bjorkstrand now going in the 12th round, Matty Beniers also. Like these are guys who do have the upside. And this is about when you start taking those swings. Because once you get to, honestly, I would say round 14, you're picking guys who you're going to drop like pretty quickly. So this is a time to try and grab one of those, like get great value from someone that you can expect a lot of upside from before you really start swinging. We've been through another couple rounds, Elon. I just want to mention Taylor Hall quickly before I recap them, which is I like Taylor Hall this year. Like I know he's like definitely taken a lot of guff from fantasy managers. And maybe he was drafted a touch early here at 125th overall. That's about half a round earlier than he's been picked, about 9 picks sooner than he's been picked in our mocks on average. But I kind of feel like Hall, Pasternak, Krejci is line 1 in Boston. Like, I think they're going to do much more scoring than Bergeron's line until Marchand is back. I think they'll all be on the power play too. I think they're in good shape to do some real damage. And of course, the thing we don't like about Hall is that he now defers to Pasternak, but now Krejci is going to also defer to Taylor Hall. So I wonder if he gets a little more of his shooting back with playing with who once was an elite setup guy in David Krejci and hopefully still is. Elon, you have any more thoughts? Yeah.
No, for sure. Taylor Hall like ended last season 16 points in his last 19 games, 7 goals.
He was a 70-point player for a large chunk of the back end of the year.
Yeah, no, like Taylor Hall is a great pick there. Like I think it was like, yeah, when they were running, Marchand Bergeron passed on line 1 and then leaving Taylor Hall to play with meh players. Yeah, what did you expect? And sometimes he wasn't even on the top power play, if you recall. They were having DeBrusque ahead of him. Now they could put Hall and DeBrusque on the top power play. I guess, like, yeah, in that interview, again, that we just released with Fluto Shinzawa, he was saying how maybe also Krejci gets up there, and that means like one of DeBrusque or Hall isn't there. But I would guess Taylor Hall has, earned that top power play spot with how well he did at the end of last season. And that to me looks like no reason why he can't hit 70 points again. So that's, again, great value for... Like, what round are we talking about that he went in here?
He went in the 9th.
Yeah, that's pretty good value.
The end of the 9th, yeah.
Right now, we're here now in like round 13. So this draft is blazing by, and there's some really fun picks that have gone recently that I wonder if just like at this point, maybe I could just like throw at you like a couple ones that I like as like late picks that I think could still be, we're talking about these guys who could have huge value even going late. Here's one that actually just went off the board. Okay. And then I'll just throw to you. Okay.
Yeah.
Michael Bunting. I like that pick a lot. This is a guy who's going to be in the exact same situation as last year. Like, I don't see a reason why he's getting bumped from that line. So why can't he just kind of repeat his Calder nominated season to be like a 70-point guy?
And one thing I do when I'm trying to decide whether a pick makes sense or not is I'll look at who the other forward picks are around him. And like I see Seth Jarvis, who, might be getting some interesting and solid deployment, but nothing's guaranteed. Same with Ricard Raquel, who went right after Bunting. I see Mangiapane, similar situation. I see Jacob Vrana, kind of similar situation too. But Michael Bunting is like the guy that I would lock into here as someone who I like. Basically, what we said about Zach Hyman in previous years, nothing's changing. He's still going to be playing with one of the best goal scorers in the world. I think that's a great pick and around also, a lot of other uncertain forwards who were going at the same time. Andrew Kopp also went before him. Tom Wilson went before him, who's going to miss significant time too. So yeah, I really like Bunting here. That's from Brett, who we already nailed for the Lindholm pick. So way to go, Brett.
Yeah, Lindholm could be a good pick. Like I could easily see Brett like playing that back for us and being like, "You idiots! Look at what you said." Yeah. Yeah, Bunting, by the way, you look at his overall points, right? 63 points in 79 games. Like, yeah, 65-point guy. Yeah, I guess he could do it again, but whatever. But it's like, don't forget, like at the start of the year, the Leafs were still playing around with some different combos. And Bunting had a stretch for like only 14 points his first 23 games. Like, if you look at his just end of the season, in his last 40 games, he had 39 points. So just like wrap your head around that, okay? Like obviously, like he's a little risky, and the reason why he falls so far is like if for whatever reason, like the Leafs decide, if like Keefe decides like I don't think it's working, and they move him to a different line, he loses like all his value. Like he becomes someone we're talking about in the podcast if like you drop him, but like we're talking about a guy that easily could be 70 plus if he's playing with like he's Matthews and Marner. Like it's enough said, I think. So yeah, I just like that as like what feels like a pretty sure thing. I also like Jeff Skinner going like we were saying how wingers are hard to find, and Skinner going in the 13th round, like is it just me or is that like really good value for a guy who how many goals did he end up with? I'm just bringing him up right now. He scored 33 goals last year,
Yeah.
had 63 points. I feel like he's pretty locked in as that top line left wing with Thompson, and then I guess like Tuck or someone else can take that right wing spot. But it seems like the new coach changed everything for Jeff Skinner.
Yeah, and remember, Jeff Skinner like did not come out of the gates like firing on all cylinders. He really only got going in the new year. I'm just trying to pull up his splits as I talk to prove my point. But I do like him here. We talked about certainty, and like I know he's been far from certain for a lot of his career, but he feels pretty certain, like with Tage Thompson up there too. Yeah, Jeff Skinner started the year with 17 points in 30 games last season. And then he finished the year on a tear for almost all of it. 46 points in his last 50 games, shooting, like taking like 3.5 shots per night, shooting at a reasonable shooting percentage, seeing only 17 minutes actually, which is crazy for the number of shots he was putting on net, which is what we've always wanted to like about Jeff Skinner. So looking at a guy who played the last 4 months of the season at an almost point per game pace and who is a goal heavy player, I really like that amongst the uncertainty of other guys, as we mentioned, like Raquel, Jarvis, Mangiapane, Vrana, Kopp. I will shout out Carter Verhaeghe, who went right after Jeff Skinner, as another player that I am sort of keeping an eye on later in drafts for the right moment. I don't know if you remember, Elon, but he was like a mystery to us for several portions of the season. Like we generally, like we came in really liking him as a guy who just gets 70 points by playing with Alex Barkov. And then he was going quiet for reasons that we could not for the life of us understand. Like nothing really added up to the disappointing parts of the season that he had last year. And I'm kind of willing to give him a pass and give him a fresh start. I assume he's still going to be playing with Barkov. And I think
and he like turned it on in the playoffs, right? So he like had a disappointing end to the season. Like Ben talked about that in his interview with David Dwork that we dropped last week, which definitely people I hope are checking out, these awesome late summer beat writer interviews. But yeah, like 12 points in 10 playoff games for Carter Verhaeghe, and David Dwork was like he was like one of their best guys in the playoffs, scoring like OT winning goals. So I feel like he's definitely earned, like, it's not as if like, oh, it didn't go, like I don't want people to like look at just the splits from the regular season, go, oh, it looks like things weren't working out that well at the end of the season. Maybe that's a sign that it ended badly and maybe they're going to shake things up next year. I think it's like, yeah, we have a new coach, so who knows what Paul Maurice is going to do, but I feel like Verhaeghe and Barkov did very well together in the playoffs, and I don't see why they would get split up. So yeah, obviously like keep your eyes open for training camp, but I'm not that worried, and I agree with you, Brian. I think that's a pretty solid pick. Should we talk goalies for a little bit?
Yeah, we have a few that we had a goalie run in round 12, which we haven't summarized yet. So if you don't mind, Elon,
please.
Would you like me to go one round at a time, or do you want me to we have 3 rounds to recap? What do you want to do?
How about I'm just going to really quickly say that all the way down at the end of round 14, Philip Grubauer just went as like a super, super late goalie.
Yeah.
And that's the second goalie taken from Edwards' team, who took Shesterkin way back in round 2. I like that pick because like it's so late and you're a starting guaranteed starter, at least to start the year. He was terrible last year. Hard guy to rely on. But like I feel like, especially in a league like ours, it's a points league. We don't ding you too badly for a goal against. Like, yeah, we took down the value of a save. But I feel like if you have a volume goalie, that's rare. And like some goalies who've been taken ahead of Grubauer, like your Vanaceks, your Francouz, even like a Husso, who Brian, I know you were high on, but I feel like Nedeljkovic could easily like make that 50-50. So I just feel like Grubauer this late is like really good value just because you're getting those guaranteed starts, unless he's like absolutely terrible. But hopefully he's taken some time to like adjust to this new system and I don't know, figure out what he needs to work on in the offseason. It's too bad we weren't able to get a beat writer interview for Seattle yet. We'll see if we can still get one, but if not, we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, I like the pick. But Brian, you could read out some of these other goalies who went. 'Cause, yeah, it's a fun group.
Well, I was thinking actually, like maybe that's how you do it for if you're going to go goalie early, you find a goalie late that you can put a lot of faith in, or like at least think that is going to be a workhorse. And I don't see why Grubauer wouldn't be. Seattle wants it to work. And Edward, like Andy, who took Vasilevsky and Hellebuck, he took early in the first, two goalies in the first 4 rounds. Edward took Shesterkin in the second round, and then D. So also went light on forward. So maybe we'll compare their teams later just to see as two managers who drafted away from forwards the most in the front rounds. But yeah, I really like that, and I like Grubauer more than the goalies that went off the board before him, who are shaky or in a timeshare or have a lot to prove. Matt Murray, Vanacek, Carter Hart, Pavel Francouz, like you said, even Husso and Georgiev. We had John Gibson go at the start of the 12th round. Then I'm going to move on. I'm going to do a recap
about Gibson.
Yeah, say about Gibson.
Like, yeah, he's been bad every year. And yeah, like there's every reason to be like, ugh, stop telling me to draft John Gibson. But like he keeps falling in drafts to a point where he's worth like picking, right? Like he's still the starter on Anaheim, who's going to be better. Like they got Klingberg, like they've got Zegras. Like I don't know if they'll be better this year, actually. Like, they still have a lot of young guys. That it would be nice to see them. Like, at some point, their defense is going to be insane. And we saw what some of their prospects were doing in that World Championships that just happened. Like, but as far as next year goes, also, I love the off-day schedule for Anaheim. So you can have Gibson, and then if you get a couple other goalies, you'll probably be able to get a lot of Gibson's games. Like, who ended up drafting John Gibson here was Nick, the team who had first overall. He has Kemper and Gibson. Yeah, I guess like there's no more. I feel like Gibson's a good goalie to draft if you're planning on rostering 3 goalies, like 3 starters, because you could just like take advantage of it. Normally people can't. But anyways, yeah, I don't know. I like Gibson there, and I think it was like worth it in the round 12. I would still take Gibson over like in the round before. We had like Husso, who we talked about, Cam Talbot. Like I don't know. I just feel like I'd rather have the starter though. Georgiev going earlier in round 11 was interesting, right? Because I guess the word is that Colorado's going to try to run him as the starter. That's what Ben's been saying on the show. And he thinks like people who think it's going to be a tandem are going to end up being mistaken. Like Georgiev has to actually run with it. So to me, he's still risky, but obviously super high upside, because if he is actually given a chance to be a starter on Colorado, like you've got a starting goalie on an amazing team and he's going to be like insane.
Justin, who drafted Georgiev, took Francouz in the next round, which is interesting, right? Like, I don't know if he needed to take Francouz in the next round, if anyone would have interest in Francouz without Georgiev. But we've talked about before, like the best tandem, if you're going to get a tandem, you're hoping to drop one guy within the first 2 weeks, right? You don't want to be stuck with them in lots of formats, including like a couple. You want to hold them all season long. And so Justin gets dibs. He gets to see who wins the goalie competition. It could be a couple tough weeks, but is probably rooting for one person to take precedence, supremacy over the other. Okay, Elon, big recap. Are you ready?
No, I'm not ready. I want to just talk about some more players, and then we'll go really quickly.
Okay. So let me talk about one then. It's the guy you talked about, John Gibson, who's at the top of round 12, where we're going to start the recap. Jared Spurgeon went right after John Gibson, and I feel like he's kind of like the John Gibson of D. Like he has disappointed, even though he's had like great deployment and great opportunity in the past. And like we've seen him deliver, but we've also seen him not deliver. And it's a guy who you spend a lot of time waiting on, being like, this should work. And
yeah, but look, he did have a 52-point pace last year.
He had the quietest 50-plus point pace on the blue line last year. It was incredible. And I think this is fantastic value, getting him in the 12th round. Like the D who went before him, Falk, Gostisbehere, Byram, Krug, Petrie, Chychrun, Severson, D'Angelo. Then we're already back at like the Klingbergs and Bouchards and Uyghurs. Like I think Spurgeon is probably the best value power play 1 quarterback available in these drafts. And now that I've said that, maybe that'll change the dynamic in your league somewhat. But he's someone I've been looking at in a lot of my mocks and watching him fall and saying, like, I'd be happy with Spurgeon as like my number 2D if I'm waiting
Yeah.
long enough. I've already got my number 1 like a couple rounds earlier. Maybe it's like John Klingberg. I'll add Jared Spurgeon a few rounds later. Then I'll find someone later on in the draft, and then maybe I'll find someone out of free agency. Like that's kind of what I'm thinking of doing for my D this year. Josh Morrissey, also incumbent power play quarterback, going at the end of round 13, 28 picks later. So there's value here. There's value.
There's still, yeah, there's D. Like, it's the thing is at this point, yeah, if you can get a top power play guy, I like that. And I think Spurgeon, like, yeah, if you get a 50-point defenseman this late, that's pretty good. Now it's here, like one day maybe Kalen Addison takes the job. But I think for next year, it's a pretty solid. We're past the days of Matt Dumba being a threat for PP1. So I like that pick. Gustav Forsling, by the way, if you listen to that David Dwork interview about the Panthers, then, he's pretty high on him. With Uyghur gone, we're looking at a potential top pairing guy who showed like real offensive spurts last year. He ended up with 37 points in 72 games, so almost a 40-point pace, and maybe his role increases this year. So I like him as like a late D, just because if he plays more minutes, like even if he doesn't get too many more points, you get more peripherals, right? The more minutes you play, the more chances you have to block and do things like that. What do you think also about Ryan Pulak, by the way, in round 15? It's pretty crazy. Like we used to think of him as like a really high. He was like a guy that we talked about in the same breaths as like a Jeff Petrie, like really amazing for peripherals, and he gets a lot of points. Last year he totally disappears. 21 points in 56 games overall. He did like turn it on a little bit at the end, right? Like, well, I guess he missed. He played only like 2 points his first 12 games, then was injured. When he came back, he did have 19 points in 44 games, which isn't like amazing, but like, it does make his overall numbers not as bad if you just take out those first like 12 games where maybe he was like still hurt or something. And there's really great peripherals there. So again, yeah, I think if you're like fading D, that's the kind of guy I'd like to get. Like not as opposed to like another direction you go is like an Owen Power, who Andy took in round 14, who knows, it's not even a guarantee to be in the lineup all season, though I think he probably will be. And he was there at the end of last season at 3 points in 8 games, was already playing like 22 minutes. And yeah, these games didn't mean anything for Buffalo. And we'll see if the games this week mean something, or this year mean something for Buffalo. I think they should be better. But yeah, I think that's also a really good value. Like I want my defensemen like late, they're going to play a lot of minutes. At least give me someone who is going to guaranteed play a lot, give me those peripherals, and maybe have a chance for some offense that we haven't seen yet.
Agree. Like, oh yeah, I don't know. Oh, I would take Ryan Pulak over Owen Power. I like the floor better. Power, I have like I think I mentioned like Joe Yerdon on the Buffalo Beats interview said like maybe Owen Power gets a turn here or there on the top unit. But that's not enough for me. And as a rookie, like I don't find rookies are often very physical in the league also. So I'm just not seeing Owen Power being someone that I'm looking to have on my team. And like Pulak is a deep cut himself, but at least I can hope to see if he puts some shots and blocks and hits down and then drop him if he doesn't. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Give us the summary. I know you want to do it. Let's hear it.
Bunch of guys. I need to get this off my chest. We've talked about a lot of them already. So here's what I want you to do, Elon, and you, dear listener. Close your eyes, listen to the names. If one jumps out, go, and then hopefully we'll talk about that guy because Elon will have made that sound. All right. John Gibson, Jared Spurgeon. This is from the 12th round. Mikhail Sergachev, Boone Jenner, Oliver Bjorkstrand, Sean Couturier, Pavel Francouz, Matty Beniers, Carter Hart, Vitek Vanacek, Matt Murray, Tyson Barrie, Neil Pionk, Ryan Ellis, gamble that he returns, but it's probably early for that gamble, but hey, Ryan Hartman at the start of the 13th, Provorov, Tom Wilson, Gustav Forsling, Andrew Kopp, Jakub Vrana, Andrew Mangiapane, Seth Jarvis, Michael Bunting, Ricard Raquel, Jeff Skinner, Carter Verhaeghe, Braden Shen. I kind of like that pick. Braden Shen came on late last year. Like he was very quiet to the point we said you could drop him, but then I think he was like not unreliable the rest of the way.
Hey, at this point of the draft, you're giving me like a top 6 top power play guy with like a good chance to get points in any given game. Like I'll take it. Definitely. Like that's a just reliable pick. Like, yeah, like it was weird how quiet he went at times, but Perron's gone. That's like one like more opportunity maybe for Shen to like stick on like a PP1 type situation. So I like that pick as well.
Yeah, I'm just looking down the stretch here. Shen ended the season with 46 points in 40 games. Or
Wow.
I could go back even further and tell you.
Is that true?
Yeah, 50 points. Am I counting the playoffs here? No, 50 points in 44 games for Brayden Shen. Now, he was shooting like almost 25%. That helped, but he was tearing it up. And I know people dropped him. And we were like, yeah, there's nothing to see here. It doesn't seem to be going well. He's also been a mystery. Like anytime someone asks me a question about Brayden Shen, I have to look into his numbers. I'm like, oh, I'm not going to find anything. I can't explain this. But yeah, like you sound very surprised at how great the rest of his season was.
I didn't realize he was that high.
Yeah, from January onward, the guy was tearing it up, over a point per game. So I think that's like, I would definitely take him at this point in the draft, followed by Josh Morrissey, also that top power play incumbent. Logan Couture to kick off the 14th round. Then Andre Burakovsky, who I've talked about, someone who I like his upside. He and Bjorkstrand both really interest me in Seattle, especially with so many quality centermen. Tanner Jeannot, Ryan O'Reilly, Owen Power, Max Pacioretty. Elon going in the 14th here, knowing he'll be out. It's like, is it 6 months? Am I remembering my injury news correctly?
I think this was a mistaken pick. He's out, like, I think for the season.
Okay.
That's not a good pick. I don't think. I would definitely not make that pick, hoping he's back for like a week at the end of the year.
Yeah, like
hopefully for Carolina, he's back just in time for him to take off LTIR in time for the playoffs, of course. The Kucherov move. Brian, by the way, I saw you pause the draft. Let it go. We got to...
We fell so... I'm going to let it go. We just felt so... I'm going to finish the recap. Okay, I'm going to let it go now. Fine. Resume draft while I continue naming players. Anthony Duclair, Trevor Moore, Riley Smith, Connor Garland, Anton Lundell. I like that pick low key. I think if you're looking for like Sam Bennett production, I mean, minus the hits, but I feel like Lundell could find his way into similar point production. Radko Gudas, Philip Grubauer, Chandler Stevenson could be good if he gets good deployment. Like I've seen thoughts saying don't write him off completely just because he doesn't look locked in to great deployment. Anders Lee to start off the 15th round. You know, I'm a sucker for him.
No, that's a good pick.
I think it's a great pick.
Same as Shen, like a guy who's going to be top line, top power play. And he had a really strong end to last season. Checks all the boxes. Like that's a guy, like at this point, like you said, Brian, you're taking guys here who probably you're going to drop. You're just hoping for someone who will be good enough to, stick, but like assume that maybe they won't. I feel like Anders Lee, like, probably will stick. Like, I don't see... He just seems like someone that's, worthy of being rostered all season, especially if you didn't get wingers, like left wing, and you're trying to, like, fill those wings because you were, like, feasting on centers early on, and now you can get a guy who, like, 2 seasons ago, he was a 58-point guy. This past season, only 28 goals, 46 points in 76 games, but look at those... he had 4 points in his first 12, 10 points in his next 18. After that, he really turned it on. He really clicked with Brock Nelson.
And he was one of those Isles who like suffered greatly from the start of the season, how wonky the schedule was. Like it took a long time for that team to find its feet. Lee still was looking shaky into like January and February, but in March, he found his game. He had 26 points in his last 30 games. He shot 22%, which helped. But this is like you said, this is the time where you're taking swings. But if you can still find a top line, top power play guy in there, that might be better than a swing.
A 30 goal player in a league that like has value for goals.
That said,
I'm happy.
I drafted Kyle Palmieri last season thinking he was top line, top power play and had potential for all those goals. But Anders Lee is different. Kyle Palmieri was like new to the team ish. So I like that. Joel Eriksson Ek followed Anders Lee in the 15th round, followed by Ryan Johansson, Ryan Pulak, Ryan Mikheyev, just kidding. Mason Marchment, Brock Nelson, David
Why
Krejci.
did you say Ryan Mikheyev? Just kidding. What's the joke?
Because I said there were 2 Ryans before him.
Oh, huh.
It wasn't that good. Jeremy Swayman, Alex Lafreniere, Mikhail Granlund, Nick Schmaltz, Travis Konechny, TJ Oshie, Anton Forsberg in the 16th round, Mantha, DeBrusk, Slavin, Atkinson, Dumba, Dunn. I'll stop on Vince Dunn as being like...
I would have stopped earlier.
Okay. Well,
I would have stopped on Atkinson. That's like a crazy value. Or actually, I would have stopped on DeBrusk also after listening to that interview with Fluto. Like, there's some good upside guys there. Yeah,
there's actually this is a really interesting round here in 16.
I would have stopped on Nick Schmaltz. Like the craziness that he gave us last year. That was insane. And Brent, you were saying you love Keller so much, so why wouldn't Schmaltz be similar as well?
Absolutely. It's the Arizona the Arizona schedule issue, but here, even I think in the 15th round, I don't think you're giving up a whole lot to see if he can be reasonably decent through those 2 months of pain and then step up later. I only stopped on Dunn because this is a time where like there's still some decent forward swings to take, but there's not a lot of D swings to take. And Vince Dunn is like Philip. I feel like he's Philip Grubauer's equivalent, right? He seems to be quarterbacking the top unit in Seattle. Like Grubauer seems to be the starter. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot of competition. Things didn't go well last year, but they've had a season and an off season to fix it, and things have gotten better in front of them. So I am like Vince Dunn is the sort of player I take as my 3 or 4D and hope he can stick. I'm ready to be disappointed, but there's like at this point of the draft, like the D taken around him, Hannafin, Dumba, Slavin, Pulak, Power, Gudis, none of these guys have the same upside. Well, maybe Hannafin, but that
maybe
Dunn
Owen
does.
Power. I feel like Brian, don't be too low on Owen Power.
I'm not seeing upside in Owen Power.
I'm not seeing upside in like a first overall pick. Like I don't know. I feel like
this
it's
season
just
behind Rasmus Dahlin.
Yeah. I mean, he's very, very good, and Joe Yurden said so. And yeah, Dahlin is good, but like, some teams have 2 good defensemen. Like, it's possible. I'm not talking about like 80, like even like 60 points. But I think if you're like talking about Vince Dunn, and be like, I don't think that anyone has the same upside as Vince Dunn. I think you could. I think Owen Power versus Vince Dunn could definitely go Power's side. I'd probably still take Power for those peripherals, but I do agree with you anyways that Vince Dunn. I don't mean to poo-poo your Vince Dunn talk. There is actually a defenseman left. Ooh, actually, Jake Sanderson. I kind of forgot about him. He's a fun. He's like a Owen Power type. Actually, I think Jake Sanderson could end up in a very similar situation where he's not like slated to be on the top power play. That'll be Shabbat, but he could be a rookie that plays huge minutes. I think Ottawa's planning on really depending on Jake Sanderson. I'm not sure what his peripherals will be. We'll have to see. Like at least we got to see a little bit of what Power can do, and he did like block some shots. There's still actually a defenseman that's going to start the year on the top power play and could be good, but we'll get there when he's picked. But yeah, lots of fun players. Brian, what do you think about okay, here's 2 names I want to throw at you, okay? First of all, Andre Palat in the 16th round. That seems like a fun I think that's a fun swing. I guess we'll have to see the lines, but I have a hunch that they didn't sign him to a multi-year deal for money to not potentially play with Jack Hughes, at least to start the year and see how it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really exciting to see what, like, this is going to be the first time that Palat's been given top billing, right? Like he was on the triplets line with Johnson and Kucherov. Even then, they weren't really top billing. They turned into it, but they weren't really the number 1 line that year even. But this is a chance for him to really play a different role in a different way. And I'm curious to see if he can fill that spot as a legit top line forward. And even on the second line, if he lands with Nico Hischier, I still think he might be able to do damage. So the same way I like Andre Burakovsky, who's shown potential and is moving to a new team where he'll see better opportunity, or new opportunity, I should say. I like Andre Palat for the same reasons, because it's not like he spent a lot of time with great players in Tampa and couldn't convert.
But he also spent some time with great players and did convert. Like he had a great season just 2 years ago. So he's shown the ability.
That was on the power play. So we'll see if he can step in and be a big part of the New Jersey power play too.
Yeah, I think it's just a good swing here. Like, yeah, not like swings don't always have to be like young players, right? Like it could just be a guy in a new situation that maybe could be better. And then on the same team, I think like Mackenzie Blackwood is like definitely you take him with a pick that like if you have to drop him, that's fine. Oh, I also want to say, by the way, Gretzky here, who like I poo-pooed his Patches pick and I was saying it was a mistake. Okay, he says it wasn't a mistake, and it's like you could just like I guess it makes sense in terms of like you could draft him, put him in your IR, and then hope that something happens and he's back. And in the meantime, you can take a free agent. So I guess that's what he was thinking. So yeah, in a league that gives you enough IR spots like we do, the word is he's not going to play this season, but maybe I guess things could happen. But anyways, okay, Mackenzie Blackwood, I think, is the only goalie left that has a chance to play on opening night, which is something, right? Like obviously he's been concerning with injuries and like not playing well, but like I think if he has a good camp, and these are all ifs, but like we're talking like a super late goalie, like he could be the starter there. Like I know it's like looks like a tandem like Blackwood and Vanacek, but I think like in a perfect world, Blackwood meets that potential that he had at one point, and Vanacek is more a backup, because I don't think Vanacek could ever be a starter. Well, that's not nice to say, but like I don't know. I think Blackwood's a fun swing here in round 16 as a goalie that has a chance. I don't know if there's any other goalies. I guess like Spencer Knight, but like he's behind Bobrovsky, like Samsonov. Actually, Samsonov's good just because Matt Murray's gonna get injured. But like
I'll throw Cal Peterson out there as another goalie with big upside this year. But
last year,
I agree in your Yeah, but now Quick's another year older and maybe Peterson's another year wiser. Like last year
Yeah,
was a
for sure.
real misstep for Peterson. It was not on trend with what else we'd seen from him. But I like what you're saying about Blackwood versus Vanacek. Blackwood has the upside,
Yeah.
right? Like,
By the
like
way,
Vanacek, I feel like we know about the best case scenario is he rattles off like a couple great weeks of starts and then doesn't for another while. Whereas Blackwood, who knows? Who knows? I don't have a whole lot of faith that he can reach whatever his upside is. But if I had to take a swing, he's not a bad swing to take. I don't know who I'd pick between Blackwood and Peterson. If I had to pick, they went about a round apart here. I think I'd take Peterson. Blackwood worries me because it feels like his team doesn't like him.
Yeah, and I'm realizing now, like, we're gonna do a whole show about goalies next week, so I guess we could move on to other stuff. Yeah, we're racing. Okay, so let me throw out a pick here. Actually, two interesting picks I want to bring up. In the 17th round, Phil Kessel went. He's a guy we haven't talked yet about him signing with Vegas. This could be a really great situation, right? Like, they don't necessarily have like a lot of top six players. Like, they have that line if they keep it together, which maybe they won't. But just thinking of their players, they have William Karlsson, Marchessault, and Riley Smith, and then they've got obviously Eichel and Mark Stone. And then, yeah, we've seen Chandler Stevenson there, but I could see like one of those guys I've mentioned being bumped and maybe like a Phil Kessel getting a shot in the top six, getting a shot on the top power play. So I think he's another fun swing. Like, he was pretty good in Pittsburgh and then he went to Arizona and it didn't click, but it might just be that like he wasn't a fit in Arizona. Maybe he's the same player he was or similar to the guy he was in Pittsburgh and he just needs another Malkin, like maybe Eichel is his Malkin. Like, I don't know exactly, but I think there's a chance here. And obviously he's a guy we're going to be watching in training camp. At the same time, like, he just couldn't score last year, which was weird. He actually ended up with like 50 points, but like hardly any goals. But yeah, Phil Kessel, I wouldn't leave him undrafted. I guess obviously I want to see what happens in training camp. I think that's a fun pick to go here. And then also, how about Arturi Lehkonen going in all the way in round 18? Like, Lehkonen really was good in Colorado, and I feel like he has a good chance to be a top six guy.
That's a very fun upside pick. Like, and I think 18th round is a better than expected place to grab him. Who else is gone? Okay, we got to Dunn, Mercer, Palat, Hannafin, Blackwood, Perfetti, Rossi, and McCann ends the 16th round. Then we had Samsonov, William Eklund as a fun pick, second in the 17th round. Spencer Knight, Connor Brown. I think I've already mentioned, like, I like this pick a fair bit. Like, I think there's a pretty good chance he plays a lot of time with Ovechkin, and I'll hold him through training camp for 1 or 2 weeks of the season to see if he does. If he's the guy, you're golden in the 17th round. Then Peterson was taken, Cal Peterson, Martin Necas, Jake Sanderson, Jamie Benn, Alex Killorn, Colton Parayko, Jacob Voracek, Mike Matheson. Elon, is that the D on the board who you were mentioning could still quarterback a power play?
That's not who I was thinking, but that's actually a very good pick. I think he definitely could like, he could be really good in Montreal. Like, not like really good, like elite, but he could be a guy who ends up being worth holding all year. We'll have to see like how things go. But yeah, there's not much competition. I don't love like Chris Weidman. Like, it's annoying that I even have to say it. Like, you have to worry about Chris Weidman taking his power play time.
Yeah.
But like, Matheson will probably play the most minutes, I think, or at least of the like more offensively inclined guys. The guy I was thinking about is somebody who went all the way in round 18, Hampus Lindholm. Because remember, Charlie McAvoy's injured to start the year, and Fluto was saying Lindholm's probably going to quarterback the top power play to start, and he's already like pretty solid for peripherals. And if he's a top power play guy, like, he's not going to be a guy in free agency to start the season. Like, he's someone that, yeah, maybe he's not an amazing long-term hold, but if you can get him this late and just help you get off to a strong start, like, definitely grab him. Like, don't leave him undrafted because he's going to be, I think, really good, like, as long as he holds that spot. Like, Grishlick's also out, right? Like, Boston really doesn't have anyone. So yeah, both of those guys are fun late D to take for sure.
Yeah, what a great way to start your season with Lindholm, and then like actively looking around because by the time McAvoy comes back, you're gonna need to find another way. But that's a great way to get started in your season for sure. Like, I'd be so happy to grab a defenseman out of free agency who can help me for the first couple months of the season. No problem, which is essentially what's happening in the 18th round. Okay, so we saw Matheson, then Kessel, then Sharangovich, and then the end of the draft, the final round, Mark Giordano, Sam Girard, why can't I'm like blanking
James Reimer?
on James Reimer. I'm like Jacob, Jason. Oh, I've said a lot of names. I think I'm doing pretty well. Arturi Lehkonen, Joe Thornton, Hampus Lindholm.
Is Joe Thornton on a team?
Joe Thornton is not on a team. I think
we have some joke picks here.
Andy was messing with us. Mario Ferraro, Eric Comrie, Slavkovsky,
Hey,
Anthony
could be huge,
Solars.
right?
Yeah, that's
Slavkovsky could be on the top line with,
fun.
Caulfield
Yeah.
and Suzuki.
Capo Kakinen. Okay, someone took David Ayers. So like two Leafs trolls at the end of and then Philip Tomasino was Edwards' second last pick of the draft, followed by Victor Olofsson, who I think there are several players taken in the rounds earlier who are more likely to be dropped sooner than Victor Olofsson. Who you guys were talking about Victor Olofsson on your draft show, right? You, Ben, Andrea, and Dave. We're talking about him as someone who might start to sneak up on us as someone who is worth rostering. I found him very frustrating to have on my roster last season. So I don't think he's going to be a repeat appearer on mine. But Joe Yerdon had some positive things to say about how maybe he can be like a kind of power play specialist and holds enough of his own at 5-on-5 that he holds some relevance through the season. So that's the whole draft, Elon.
Yeah, maybe we could end by mentioning a couple players that we think didn't get drafted but could have been worth drafting.
Yeah, do it.
All right, so just some names off the top of my head. I'm a little bit interested in Dylan Strome in Washington. I think it looks like he'll be the second line center. We'll have to see if he gets top power play. Actually, Ryan Strome on Anaheim, similar thing, right? We have two Stromes that are going to be in new situations and could end up being second line centers. So they obviously have to do something with it. But I think those are guys that could, but they're not, I don't know. It's like on one hand, maybe they're not big enough swings to like draft, but they'd be people I'd be watching in free agency. Mason McTavish just had that amazing, junior championships for Team Canada, and so anyways, he's on Anaheim, and if he could actually be this, I don't know. So we'll see if it's like him or Ryan Strome, second line center in Anaheim. How about a defenseman? It's just like 2 years ago that Alec Martinez was and I know like Alec Martinez like overperformed and he's not as good as how he was 2 years ago, but like he's like probably likely to like lead the league in blocks or be up there, assuming he actually plays. Like last year, you could almost write off the whole year. He had this injury and he just never came back, or when he did come back, who knows if he was even at 100%. So like a lot of these Vegas guys, I think Alec Martinez could be like just one of your solid. Like we talked about some other peripherals guys that went like kind of late. We were like, yeah, I guess I could see that pick just to have a solid floor. Like your, I don't know, like obviously he's not like a Trouba. Like there's more or Darnell Nurse. Like, but like a low end version of that, I think is Alec Martinez. So he's someone who I'd be pretty happy to get, especially if like I faded D for a while. Shane Wright is someone who, like, I guess we'll have to see, but he's a rookie, and if he plays, like, you never know. Like, he was drafted, people thought he would be like a first overall guy, and then he turned out falling to fourth. That doesn't mean he's like a nobody, right? So I don't know. So just some names that come to mind. Maybe I'll throw one more. Dylan Cousins on Buffalo. Someone was going to center that second line. I could definitely see it being Cousins, and maybe he could do something. Also, like, don't you think Seattle has a bunch of guys? Actually, Seattle's the team with the most like undrafted top liners, like, or potential top sixers, like Eberle and Jaden Schwartz. Both can be guys that do something and are worth rostering. So again, maybe not the biggest swings, but guys who can do stuff. So some names.
Those seem like, top of the pile kind of FAs who I would, I might draft. I mean, maybe this from experience, like I had Jordan Eberle. I drafted him pretty late last year. I held him a lot, even though he barely performed above replacement, but it was enough to hold on my roster. I'll throw out, like, I don't know. I don't think I'd draft him, but Kyler, when you're done a draft, you want to have a lot of guys on your watch list. Like Kyler Yamamoto, I'd see how he's doing at camp, even though I've lost most faith in him. I'd be at least curious to see what he might have to offer. Freddie Gaudreau, I know he's lost Fiala, which I think
he has Boldy.
Yeah, if
he holds that spot.
Yeah, exactly. So he's someone I'd be curious to see if he can continue being relevant. Elon, I thought you came up with a bunch of good names. I'll throw out one more, which is Alex Barabanov over in San Jose, playing on the top line with Hurdle and Meyer. It's not Matthews and Marner, but I still think he's got a pretty good spot to put up to make some noise.
Like, it's not guaranteed that he gets that spot, but while he's there, he's been like worth streaming. I don't know if he's like someone that I'm so excited to draft, because I really can't imagine holding him all year, but he's like, he's been good. What about like Pavel Zacha? Word is he's going to start the season. Same with Hampus Lindholm, right? If Zacha's going to be playing with Bergeron and DeBrusque on the top line, or I guess what Brian doesn't want to call the top line, but like that could end up being a guy who's worth grabbing to see what he can do in a new situation. But okay, I think we've gone pretty long here. So thanks so much to all of our drafters and all of the listeners. I hope you enjoyed this mega two-part draft commentary episode. If you want to look at the draft results, we will post them. Let's say keepingkarlsson.com/mock draft. Okay? And I'll remember to put that up.
Save some keystrokes.
/mock. keepingkarlsson.com/mock. If you go there and there's nothing there, please tweet at us and be like, you guys blew it. Why didn't you make keepingkarlsson.com/mock? But yeah, all of this was a mock draft for the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League, the Cupful, which you still can sign up for. Registration deadline is September 8th.
We should have mentioned that like at the top of episode 1. We're terrible.
We
marketers.
did. I did a whole long thing. What are you talking about?
We talked about the Cupful. I forget. I didn't say anything.
All right, let me just keep going. I'm
registering.
going to edit this out. All right.
Okay.
The registration deadline is September 8th. We want you to join the league. I think you're going to have a great time. And also, it's not the only perk you get, by the way. If you support the podcast and become a patron, first of all, you're supporting content like this. We've got a lot coming. We got our goalie episode next week that everyone's always excited about. We put a lot of work into this, as you can tell. So we also give our access to our awesome patron community, which honestly, like, I don't take too much credit for. Like, we built the community, but it's just now an amazing community with really smart people. And Brian and I are also there giving advice on all the advice questions that come in. And like, we're ready for you to come in and we can help you make your decisions before your drafts, keepers and whatnot. And also you could talk and get to know all of our amazing community, which I'm just so grateful to have. We also do monthly patron casts. We just did one a couple days ago, which was so fun. The longest one ever, like almost as long as this show, or maybe longer. If you like add up part 1 and part 2 together, we answer every question and we had some really fun ones. So that and more. We've got more perks coming. We do show notes during the season that you'll get. Brian also have this like thing where we might be doing like live show, like watching live shows together. Sorry, like
It's
live
called a watch party.
Oh yeah, watch parties. Sorry, my mind is starting to disappear here. But yeah, we're gonna like watch games, and we have a platform that I think we're gonna be able to do this on, where all the patrons will be able to watch games together and just like have a good time. So that and more. So keepingkarlsson.com/patron, and specifically for the Cupful and all that information, go to kkupfl.com and register today. If you played last year and you haven't registered yet because you assume you're in, like you're not. You have to tell us you're in. So go and register, please, ASAP. But with that, Brian, let's cue the outro music. And why don't you go ahead and read us the credits and get us out of here?
All right. Well, first off, I want to thank Nick, Taylor, DK, Phil, Andy, Brett, Justin, Chris, Dylan, Tom, Julien, Mike, Edward, and JL for being up, for volunteering to do this mock with us live, ready to mock and be mocked live. Imagine the pressure. So thanks to you all for participating, and to everyone who volunteered in our patron community. Thank you very much. If we didn't get you this time, we'll get you another. But you were all amazing. And when you look at the results, feel free to tweet us or share it if you're a patron in our Discord server, who you think did the best, because I think they would all love some feedback that we just ran out of time to give on this episode. So thanks to you all for drafting with us. This episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast was presented by Dauber Hockey and powered by our patrons. Sorry, I need to pause here to pull up my dog. I wasn't ready. Hang in. I'm coming. Promise. Do you know the name of the person who sings that, or the song?
What was her name? If you gave me a multiple choice, I would get it.
Okay.
Suzanne Vega.
Nice. Do you know the name of the song?
Tom's Diner.
Wow, so good. Did you look it up? It looks like
no.
You're looking it up. Oh,
let's
good for you.
let's
It's
go to
just
trivia
such a
at some
catchy
time.
song. Okay. This episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast was presented by Dauber Hockey and powered by our patrons, including our super supporters, Patty, Rob, David, Derek, Tom, Andrea, Flash, Tyler, and Aaron. Thank you all. Thanks to Kevin. Just shout out for being like an amazing third part of our team, coordinating the Cupful, and our brand new team of co-commissions. You're all the greatest, and we have a couple commish captains in there too. It's a group effort running the Cupful, so thanks to everybody who's been involved with that. Elon, thank you and Shams for keeping those Twitter feeds alive with all the latest fantasy news. You can find them all at gamedaytweets.com. There's 3 of them. You need them all to win your league this year. Follow Blendwist, Ben and Lewis on Twitter at ShortShiftsKK. Logo art by BrandonWeeb.com. Outro music by Pat Roach. This episode was researched with help from Dauber Hockey, Frozen Tools, Natural Stat Trick, Cap Friendly, The Athletic, Hockey Reference, Hockey Viz, Hockey Database, NBC Sports Edge, and Fantrax.
All right, great job as always, Brian. Thanks again to all of our drafters. You all are clearly very smart and good at drafting, and it's going to be fun to look at what some of these picks turned out to be. I think I'm going to want to go back and re-listen to this episode later, just to like get a sense of like what things I said that were smart and what things I said that were really terrible, and I owe people apologies. And I'll have to send people like fruit baskets or something to apologize for mocking picks that turned out to be brilliant. Probably Elias Lindholm will be the one that makes me eat my words the most, but we'll see. Brian, you did it again. An amazing job, and I'm sure all of our listeners are very excited to hear what you have to say next week when we have our annual tradition Schmore Goalies board. It's going to be an amazing show, and I got to get to work on coming up with goalie tiers. I'm super stoked for it. So everyone who is not subscribed yet, get that episode downloading automatically to your phone so you don't accidentally miss it, okay? So you just like subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Like I use a Pocket Cast I really like, not to throw out an unpaid ad here. Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, make sure you subscribe so you'll get all of the shows. And also that helps us also, by the way. If you subscribe and a 5-star review, by the way, wherever you get your podcast also helps us. But okay, Brian, what should people do while they wait to hear what we think about goalies that we haven't already said on this show?
Please do all that you can. I mean, I want you to join the Cupful, come play with us, become a patron. That's great. But most importantly, whether you do that or not, please keep doing what you can to make sure that fantasy hockey is for everyone.
Sweet. Good job, everybody.
All right.
Screen share.
You're going to do a classic race off here. I can feel it.
Yeah. Bye. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks. I didn't get to look at the chat very much, but thank you everyone for being here. What episode number was this?
I don't know. 440 something, I think. 443, 444.
Okay.
I don't know. We do a lot of we numbered the beat writer interviews, which I don't know. What is it?
Did you name it in the event? It's 443. Okay.
All right, there it is. All right, thanks all. Bye.